Hey, Brandon, should we go muted unless we talk?
Yes, please. Please mute yourself unless you're talking.
So how do we mute ourselves, or do we?
And we're going to be live here in about 20 seconds. Okay, good evening. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. My name is Brandon Paxton. I'm the Public Information Officer with Clackamas Fire, and we are excited to have this sort of open forum community meeting to discuss two topics, the first of which is a general recap of the recent wildfires and to discuss the next steps. And the second topic is the proposed merger between Estacata and Clackamas Fire that you'll find on your November ballot. As we go through this presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to type those into the comments below. And that's where we'll read those questions to the panelists so they can answer those questions, and we'll take those in the order which they come in. We have about an hour and a half scheduled for tonight's meeting, so we'll get to those questions as time allows. And this meeting is being recorded, so if you know folks who aren't able to watch it and watch it live, we'll have that rendered and all basically available to share tomorrow morning. So it'll be recorded and ability to share tomorrow morning. So with us tonight, our panelists include from the Joint Oversight Committee, from the Estacada Fire Board, President Matthew Silva, and Director Ken Oliver from the Estacada Fire Board, and from the Clackamas Fire Board, Director Jim Searing and Director Don Trotter. Additionally, we have Clackamas Fire Chief Fred Charlton, Division Chief of Operations Nick Brown, and Battalion Chief Steve Dieters. So with that said, we'll jump right into the content, and I'd like to pass it over to Director Matthew Silva.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. There's some legal requirements for me to read something prior to going into this discussion. So bear with me for a second. Thank you again for joining us tonight. We look forward on sharing information with you regarding the wildfires and the proposed merger between Estacada Fire and Clackamas Fire. This is a public meeting of the Joint Oversight Committee made up of 2 elected members from both the Estacada and the Clackamas Fire Board of Directors and Clackamas Fire staff. The Oversight Committee is a public body subject to public records and public meeting laws. At the meeting today, the committee will be discussing 2 issues. 1, the wildfire event, and 2, the potential merger of Estacada Fire District and Clackamas Fire District. For the merger discussion, please understand that no staff time or district resources have been used to politically advocate for or against this measure. The district has taken great care to provide only Secretary of State approved neutral and factual information regarding the merger. This information can be found at clackamasfire.com. The rules against political advocacy, however, do not apply to the elected officials. This means during the merger discussion, elected officials may express their own personal opinions and advocate for or against the merger. They may not and have not used any district resources, time, or staff to do so. So thank you and welcome. I would like to turn it over to Chief Charlton.
All right, good evening. Thank you, President Silva. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. The devastating wildfires, as you know, start on Monday, September 7th on Labor Day. And just as a recap, within Clackamas County, if you don't include the Beachy Creek fire, it's about 140,000 acres that have been burning. So that makes up the Riverside fire and then the North Cascade complex. Within the North Cascade Complex, that would be the Dowdy Fire, the Unger, the Wilhoit, and the Graves Creek. In my 26 years at Clackamas Fire, I've never seen such a devastating incident come into our fire district or into our county. We understand this has been incredibly stressful for all of you. It's been stressful on all of us. And as we have worked through the challenges of responding to these devastating fires, we recognize we had a lot of struggles and not everything went well. Within those struggles, we have began to look into many community concerns around our performance. And we understand that we failed in many cases to meet your expectations. And for that, we apologize. And we want to improve our performance. We want to work with the community. So we've started that work now. The next step to this will be a comprehensive after action review. And we're going to plan on bringing in somebody from the fire service outside from the state of Oregon who has extensive wildfire experience, who can go through and look at our performance, look at how we integrated with other local, state, and federal resources, and really come up with a list of things that went well, but more importantly, a list of areas that challenged us and how do we improve our performance. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being there to support our community. Again, we understand how stressful these times are, and we hope tonight to share more information and then take questions as we walk through a recap of the wildfires. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Well, like the chief said, thank you for spending some time with us tonight. And I just wanted to reintroduce myself. I'm Battalion Chief Steve Dieters. I am stationed here at the Astacata main station. I've been here since about October of last year as we transitioned into the contract. And I know it's been said a million times to the community, but as somebody that was here for those I was in and out of here for those first 8 days, and just overwhelmed by the amount of community support that we received during this event. Now, not all of the interactions were positive. I met hundreds, if not 1,000 people, but by and large, those interactions were positive. We were sharing information. We were learning about each other, what people had, and I was sending that information forward as best and as quickly as I could. And it was a great experience to meet a lot of people that just came together. And I know I'm going to miss some people, but I just wanted to mention a few people. The first of which is Joel Litke and his group. Joel was down here. I'd never met him before. He introduced himself, and the second thing out of his mouth was, "How can I help?" And so I put him to work, and it was fantastic. And he was able to help in ways with his group that we just, during all of that, we were, it was just sort of melee down here. For anybody that was down here, you know what I'm talking about. There was just lots and lots of things going on here. So he was a great support, him and his group. And then another person, two people actually, Director Oliver and Greg Rosen, and I believe his daughter, they showed up one day and they just set up a barbecue and started feeding people. And I can't say how thankful we were at that moment, day 3, I believe it was. So for you guys just to show up and start doing that, and then for the community to come together and then to set up an entire operation across the station in a field, providing an area for the donations to go and to get them out and to help us coordinate getting those to the fire lines and all that. And then midstream, Joel and his group was able to also set up across the street out of the area. And because there was so much action going on and so many donations coming in, and they set up, and it was just impressive. I toured it, and I couldn't believe that what the community was able to set up. So just a big thank you to everybody. I know we've said it a ton of times, but I haven't got the opportunity to actually say it to the community. I've said it to individuals, but I wanted as many people to hear how thankful we were for the support and the interactions that we did have. That's all I have.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. Just to reintroduce myself, I'm Nick Brown. I'm the operations chief for Clackamas Fire. day one as operations chief for me was September 1st, 6 days before this event, and talking with Matthew and Ken. This was a trial by fire, literally, for me, coming in as the operations chief for this event. I'm grateful to be standing before you or talking before you via internet. In this case, I'm just grateful for being able to meet with you today. I know that in the community that there are a lot of concerns. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of frustration, and those fears and those frustration, they're not only shared by you, they're shared by the firefighters as well. We're a profession where we expect ourselves to be perfect. And when we don't achieve being perfect, we're often harder on ourselves than anybody else could be. We strive day in and day out to meet the needs of our customers. That's you. We've sworn an oath to serve and protect you. And that's what we strive to do day in and day out. And everything that's around our mindset and what we do is that. I've had the opportunity over the last few weeks to get to know a lot of members of the community. And I've been able to hear a lot of great things about our department and what we did during the event. And I've also heard a lot of negative. And I would like to just take the time to hone in on some of the negative things and summarize basically a lot of the common themes that we're hearing as we've been meeting with a lot of you community members. But before we do this, I want to just dive into September 7th a little bit and really the next 72 hours of what your Clackamas firefighters were doing. At about 6 p.m. on Monday night, wind was howling pretty good, as you all know. And we started getting miscellaneous fire calls one after another. And some of these miscellaneous fire calls were big wildfire events. From 9/7 at 6 p.m. Till about 72 hours after, we responded to 144 working fires. Of those 144 working fires, 22 of them were greater alarm fires. And what a greater alarm fire for us is it's a first alarm fire is based on the type of incident, whether it's a commercial fire, a residential fire, or a wildland fire. There's a preset number of apparatus that respond to those events. And often, more times than not, we're able to mitigate the emergencies we face with the first alarm assignment. It just wasn't the case with what we faced on the 7th. So, or through that 72 hours, we had 22 that were greater alarm than the first alarm fires. Within the first 6 hours of this event, we had 35 working fires. Of those 35 working fires, 11 of them were greater alarm fires. And of those 11, 6 of them were third alarm or greater. And to give you a little insight, a third alarm fire strips the resources for the most part of Clackamas Fire District. And we depend heavily on our mutual aid partners post that. And we had 6 of them, 6 third alarm or greater within that first 6 hours. And some of those turned into 5+ alarm fires that lasted the duration of this event. As we started really breaking down this incident and looking at our performance and what we represent as a fire district, and reaching out with the community has been a humbling experience. And I cannot thank those that we've been in contact with enough for being raw and giving us the time to share your concerns as well as your praises. To dive into some common themes that we've been facing and looking into and mitigating and creating a plan to mitigate. A reoccurring theme that keeps getting brought up is the tactical pause and the community feeling abandoned. And that feeling is real. And I'm sorry that those feelings exist. I can't imagine in the worst conditions to not only be faced with potentially losing homes and loved ones, but then to also feel abandoned. All I can do is tell you that you were not abandoned. You were not. We didn't leave you alone. Okay. I want to give you a little clarity on the decision-making process and what exactly happened and where we strategically placed ourselves during this event and why we made this decision. So on the September 10th, that's when incident commanders from the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office began overseeing the Clackamas County Wildfires. They were in contact with the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office meteorologists and fire behavior team, and they predicted that the Beachy Creek fire and the Riverside fires would likely merge. This was a worst case scenario for us. If this fire merged, it would create a plume-dominated fire, had the possibility to occur. This had the potential of creating high winds and erratic fire behavior capable of spreading fire embers miles ahead, and the term was 15 miles ahead of the main body of fire. The description that was given to us as we asked, what exactly does this mean? Oregon State Fire Marshal Incident Command structure said that it's basically apocalyptic fire behavior is what we're going to see, and that under no circumstances should any firefighter be near the flame front. So this was a decision-making time for us. And based on that data, the insight from law enforcement, communication with the Forest Service, ODF, and the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office, the decision was made to focus our mission on protecting the thousands of residents that were going to be in potential danger in the event that this happened. We started expanding our level 3 evacuations, to which a large portion of our residents felt and were not able to go back to their homes for a while. We knew that the area of Astacata had been under level 3 evacuations for the better part of 24 hours or greater up to this time frame. And so the decision was made by us to pull our crews off the front line and place a few task forces in the city of Estacada and downtown Estacada. And we placed a couple task forces off of 211 in between Springwater and Colton. And we placed the remainder of our task forces at the training center for Clackamas Fire. Crews never abandoned the communities. We were there. You might not have seen us, but we were still there. I'm extremely grateful that during this event that the plume-driven fire didn't happen. We had a battalion chief whose wife works for FLIR that got onto a FLIR jet to try to get air recon for us before we made this decision. And when we saw that the plumes were combining, our greatest fear, we thought this was going to happen. And we're just so grateful that it did not. All the data and everything that we had told to us was that this event was going to happen. And it's a blessing that it didn't. We're grateful that it went the other route. As we were looking at the live picture of the plumes merging from the FLIR jet, we're just grateful it didn't happen. So just want to make sure that the community knows that we did not abandon you. We did leave the front lines, but we left the front lines to save our firefighters and to pull out any community that we could. And we're just grateful it didn't happen. The next thing that we've been hearing that's been a reoccurring theme, and this is something that really is sitting uneasy with me. It sits uneasy with all of Clackamas Fire family, and it sits uneasy with all the Clackamas Fire citizens. I can guarantee it is, though we had multiple incidents where we were working well with our community, with some of the homeowners and landowners that stayed back to protect their homes, that had heavy machinery. There was a lot of amazing work that happened when that collaborative effort, when everybody was working together. But with that, come to find out after talking with a lot of our citizens, there was a lot of areas where this did not happen. And there was a lot of negative interactions as well, and negative interactions with local operators and the citizens of those community members. And the plain and simple fact is we own this. That's our fault. Our goal for Clackamas Fire is to bring calm to chaos, is to make our customers feel like they're part of the team, because they are. It's to mitigate and respond to all the needs that you guys have, and to have people feel like they were treated poorly. It's just not what we represent, and we own it, and we're going to correct this. We're going to correct this negative perception, and a lot of this is going to be through some intermediate training through all levels of the organization, having to do specifically with crisis communication. Being able to deliver what our plan is and why our plan is to the community is crucial. It's crucial to the success of the fire department, and it's crucial to having that peace of mind for the community. And we own this. This is our fault. The last piece that I'd like to speak to, well, there's another piece with this, is the lack of familiarity with local landowners and equipment operators. You know, after communicating with so many of you out in the community, gosh dang it, I wish we'd have known you before this incident occurred, because the outcome would have been different. The simple fact is we just didn't know the community. We didn't typically, when we start to partner with our communities, we immerse ourselves in the communities, and we just hadn't had the opportunity to do this, to get to know you like we like to. The knowledge and resources that the community members have is something that I haven't seen since when I first started at Astacata County Fire. That community resource is flat amazing that Estacata has. And over the past 2 weeks, I'm grateful and humbled for the experience that you guys have let me into your homes. You've invited me to your community picnics, to be able to share stories, and to be able to create avenues to get better. And you know, we've reached out to over 60 community members, and was invited into Don Headland's home, Scott Bever's home, met with Dean Adcock and George and Luke Youngberg, Scott Bever, Will Perry. And after meeting with these individuals, it's crystal clear, and it was crystal clear to me, the resources you had. Talking to George, he said, "Nick, if you'd have just called me, I'd have had 13 water tenders at your disposal right then." And if we'd have known that, it just would have made things go a lot better for us. And so moving forward from here, because part of our responsibility is to learn from the past, so that in the future this doesn't happen again. We're forming a work group, and Dean Adcock has graciously offered up to help with this, as well as Scott Bever, and George has offered input as well, to be able to help us to create a Clackamas Fire resource list that would be able to be special called to all hazard events, not just wildfires, to all hazard events that we could potentially mitigate in our local area. And the efficiency that this is going to create, and the partnership that this is going to create with our local community is much needed. And I wish we'd have had this in place before these wildfires happened. And that's our fault that it did not. That is a lack of preparation from our end and from my end as the operations chief. And I'm sorry. The final thing, and this is something that, as I've talked with George Youngberg about a lot, and this question he keeps asking me, and I've heard it a lot from a couple other citizens as well, is why the firefighters didn't put the fire out. And the perception that is, and that you have, is that's a hard one to swallow. That's a hard pill to swallow. I can guarantee it. You hire a fire department to put fires out, and that's what our job is. But where our failure is being able to identify and to express what our strategies and what our tactics were for this fire. And so much of that was driven by our resources and what we had, the amount of resources that or incidents that we were responding to at the same time. Our objective for this fire, and is on every incident, if you look throughout the mission and vision of Clackamas Fire, our number one objective always in every incident that we come to is life safety. That's our number one priority, is to save lives. And we're grateful that not a single life for this county-wide natural disaster was lost. And that's due to your actions as a community, as well as the actions of your Clackamas firefighters, as well as the mutual aid partners and the Forest Service and ODF, and state resources as well. We all bound together and tried to mitigate a disaster that we faced. And I think that needs to be celebrated. But with that, having you understand exactly what our mindset was and why we were doing it is important here. So our number one was life safety. Number two after that is structure protection. And after number one and number two is number three, and that's property conservation, i.e. Forests that are on fire, things that are outside of a residence. Based on the resources we had in the allocation, the simple fact is we did not have resources to get to number three. Our resources were focused on number one and number two. And though we had pockets in certain neighborhoods where we were in IA and initial attack and combating fire, the majority strategic objective for this fire for us was saving lives and protecting houses. And in that, some of the strategy is to allow fuels to burn up to the structures. And that's the thing that a lot of the public were frustrated about most, is why we didn't just put the fire out. And I understand that paradigm. I understand that view. But our view was, with the resources we had, that we were going to let the fuels burn up to the house and put the fire out at that point. That way, we didn't have to worry about fuels reigniting later on and having more danger to the houses as we moved on to protect other areas. As we've gone through this event, we're looking at how our strategies and tactics, how we applied them, and if they were the right ones or not. And the only way to truly do this is if we did an internal AAR, it would be jaded by what our view is. And so what we've done to own our piece and to make sure that we either did our strategy and tactics correctly or that we didn't, was to hire an outside consultant and bring in somebody from the outside of the organization to expose our underbelly, to see how we responded to this emergency and what we can do to improve. And that's something that we're taking very seriously. Chief Charlton has reached out and found a fire chief that retired out of California Fire, who has an extensive background in wildland, and more specifically wildland urban interface, which is what we faced here in this disaster. We're going to have an executive summary that's going to be made public by the middle of December that we'll be able to distribute to the community. One of the questions I've heard is, why are we not getting that out prior to? And the simple truth of this is that we want to make sure that we do this right. We want to learn from the successes, but more importantly, we want to learn from the failures of this event and grow and move from here. I also know that what a lot of people need to understand is how big a lot of these fires were. Typically, Clackamas Fire, we can respond to 10 to 20 acre fires, and we do that on a every summer basis for the most part, within our communities. What we don't normally face are 60, 250, 1,500, and 135,000 acre fires, and that's what we were up against, with Dowdy Road Fire being 1,500 acres, Unger being 240 acres. Potter Road was 35 to 40 acres, and Riverside being 135,000 acres. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to be speaking to you, and I look forward to being able to answer some of your questions or concerns. And I can't thank the community members that have let Clackamas Fire into your homes since this event, and to be able to learn from you, the Bonnie Lure and Eagle Creek community, for opening your doors and inviting us to that barbecue. I can't thank you enough for that. I also would like to give a quick shout out. I'm not trying to name drop here, but this is where I feel like this is an important piece here. And forgive me for not knowing her first name, but Mrs. King, throughout this event, we had firefighters that were fighting this fire for 72 straight hours. And we had community members that were fighting this fire for that long as well. But for her to grab one of my firefighters and make a bed in her own home for him, to get a couple hours of sleep, for recognizing that and for feeding the crews that were out in her neighborhood fighting the fire, I can't thank you enough. And there was stories upon stories of that happened amongst the Astacata citizens and our communities in the Redland area. And we just cannot thank you enough for your support. And we can't thank you enough for the feedback and helping us to grow from this incident and be better so that we can better serve you. Thank you.
Nick, thanks for the overview, and appreciate you taking the time to explain some of those details and concerns. Just looking at the comments, we don't have any questions that have come in as of yet. I know we do have a couple of questions sort of in our conversations that we have had with folks out in the community. So I'll start with those. I'll read them to you one by one. These are, again, some follow-up questions that we had based off prior discussions with people by phone and in person. So we'll start with the first one. And the first question is, how does Clackamas Fire intend to provide a response to wildfires that threaten our community in the future? And the second part is, at what level of wildland training do the firefighters have?
Thanks, Brandon. You know so much about this incident, and we're really going to be diving into this AAR too to help us, because looking at it at the surface, I start to look at, gosh, I wish I had more Type 6s and Type 3 apparatus, which are brush trucks, for this incident, because as we bring in a Type 1 fire engine, which is a structural fire engine, they just don't have the off-road capability that a Type 3 or a Type 6 brush truck does, to which a lot of the community members had. So I think as we move forward, the first thing that we are doing actively right now is looking at our inventory as far as apparatus, and if it's placed appropriately. Do we need more Type 3s? Do we need more Type 6s? And the short answer is yes, we do. And so figuring out where in the budget we could start laying out for purchases of these so that we're better prepared as incidents come our way. Another opportunity that we've had is through partnerships with the Forest Service. We're sending crews next week to Central Oregon to work on backburns, and through that partnership with the Forest Service, it's creating training opportunities for us to start diving into that wildland urban interface and bettering our knowledge there. So providing training is going to be crucial for us moving forward, Brandon. You know, as we look at what our people are currently trained at, coming in the door, we have we have about 13 firefighters that don't have any wildland training, but out of the 250 firefighters that we have, we only have 13 that don't have the base level of wildland training. So majority of our people have the base level, which is a firefighter Type 2. And that's that level training. We have 27 members that have their firefighter Type 1, which is also the squad boss certification. And then we have 40 trained firefighters, and most of them are company officers. But we have cross-section throughout our apparatus operators as well as firefighters as well that have their engine boss level. Again, that's about 40 of those members. And then we have 7 trained strike team or task force leaders, which are certified to be all hazard strike team leaders or task force leaders. And we have 2 members within our department that are trained to the division supervisor level and participate in the Oregon State Fire Marshal teams at that level. We also have members that are part of the safety officer for the Oregon State Fire Marshal and PIO. The big thing for us here, Brandon, to be and for the community members that are asking this question, is in an effort for us to be better prepared. The most crucial thing for this is not only to train our people, but is that community interaction and establishing that resource list so that we can partner up with our community because if I'd have known Will Perry had an 800-gallon Type 6, I would have called him. If I'd have known George would have been able to get me 13 water tenders and Dean Adcock getting me dozers and backhoes, this just would have been a different situation. And so for moving forward to be better prepared for the community, that's going to be key for us.
Perfect. Thank you. One additional question before we move on to a couple of the questions that are being asked on the comment section now. What is Clackamas Fire's policy on major events for personnel? So callbacks and things along those lines.
So, we have a set in play, and it's through an active 911 app that we all have the ability to call back our employees at a moment's notice. So for this event, on Monday night, we called back into the event. We called back and staffed 2 brush trucks, a Type 1 engine, which is a fire engine. And then on Tuesday, we had a mandatory emergency callback that we sent out to every firefighter to come back if you could respond to work. And so that's what we have basically in play by policy. The thing that we didn't prepare for in this incident was being able to swap our crews out and working for 72 straight hours. Like I said previously with Mrs. King, who made that bed for that firefighter, he was awake for 72 straight hours. And so that's a piece that we will be revising our policy and revising our strategies and tactics as we move forward, so that we have operational periods, so that we have well-rested and firefighters moving forward. But that's what our callback, that's what our policy currently is as far as calling back is we have shifts that we work, and that's a standing force, a standing army of employees that are on duty. And then we have a callback, the ability to mandatory callback resources as needed, to which we did.
Okay, thanks. We're going to start taking some questions from the online comment section. The first of which was, how many fires are still burning? Good.
So we do not have 100% containment on Riverside as we speak. Dowdy is, I don't want to speak out of turn here. Do we know what Dowdy, Steve, do we know what Dowdy's containment is, or Fred?
Sorry, I thought we had 100% containment with Dowdy, Will Hoyt, and Unger, but we can certainly follow up on that tonight. And then we'd have to refer to the U.S. Forest Service website. It may be in the mid high 50s to low 60% contained for Riverside.
Riverside, yeah, that sounds right. Thanks.
Okay, Chief Charlton, this question is probably best suited for you. Will there be plans for better forest management, or is that much of these forests are in federal land? So is that an obligation of the U.S. Forest Service, or who takes care of forest management practices?
Yeah, great question. That's not necessarily my area of expertise. Certainly there is a lot of attention at the legislative level right now at the state of Oregon around what we just went through and how to mitigate that moving forward. I think a big component of that is forest management. It's fuels reduction. It is emergency alerting. I think there's a combination of strategies that you'll see from the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office, Oregon Department of Forestry, hopefully U.S. Forest Service, as we begin to recover from these wildfires on how to help mitigate these moving forward. I think there's even strategies around when you have these predicted high wind events and red flag warnings, how can we be more proactive in, say, shutting off the use of, or the access to campfires in the U.S. Forest Service, or how do we better control any outdoor burning just to ensure that we don't have this type of disaster again. So I apologize to the individual who asked. I don't know where that lies as around forest management.
Hey, Brandon, can I give a quick follow-up on Riverside? It's at 72% contained. So Chief Charlton was real close. 72% contained currently.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the follow-up on that. An additional question. we'll start with you, Nick, and then Steve, if you want to weigh in relating to volunteers. So the question is, can you please share how you will encourage volunteers from the Estacata community directly? Citizen volunteers are very important for a community task force. Where will the training occur?
That's a great question. Let me just answer the front part of this, Steve, and then if you speak to where the training will occur in that would be great. I think a lot of our interaction is going to be that face-to-face, and it's going to be coming from that work group that we are forming with community leaders to try to establish and to encourage being able to volunteer. Talking to George Youngberg, all he cares, he doesn't care about anything else. He doesn't care about, he just wants to be able to volunteer and help the community. And so it's things like that and getting to know these people and encouraging them and setting up the process for that local contingency is going to be crucial for us. Sorry. Thanks, Steve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to follow up a little bit on that, there's been some traction around establishing, or at least looking into. We currently don't have just a citizen volunteer that focuses on a particular project or something emergency wise. We do have CERT, which is the Community Emergency Response Team, and they fill quite a few roles. And could this be something that they fill? Absolutely. Is this something we should look into? Absolutely. Just to touch on a couple of things, when we came into this contract and into this building, we weren't given a notebook that said, here's where everything's at. And then, you put COVID on top of that, and we really get to go to the grocery store. That's what we get to do. There isn't community happenings that we get to. We've been to a couple so far that have happened that are COVID compliant, and we were happy to be part of that. And I think strengthening the relationship is where we start, and we start learning about that and how best can we fit the needs of the community and the volunteers themselves. I think that we've always prided ourselves on developing a program that fits the needs and fits our needs, but more importantly, fits the needs of the person that's actually volunteering their time. And we want to get use and have them use so that they feel worthwhile and that we do want them and we do need them. So there's more conversation to be had around that. And I think those conversations are starting right now. So there should be some follow-up, and the sky's the limit when it comes to what we can do and what we can do with the community.
Thank you both. And as a follow-up question, Steve, this one's for you. Do you have an estimate or a time frame when the volunteer program will be opening it up again? So taking new applicants?
Yeah, absolutely. So we open it up at the end of February. So right around March 1st, we open it up. You can apply at any time online, and it sits in a queue, and it'll send you a confirmation that we got it. And then as we get closer to developing the timeline of the entry-level process, we reach out individually by email and let you know what those next steps are and all of the necessary things that are needed to be done. But March 1st would be about the time.
Okay, thank you. Nick, this one is going to be for you. Right now, is there any live wildfire training available for the Clackamas Fire District? For example, training used to occur in Central Oregon, but that funding was pulled several years ago. Have you considered how to better train firefighters for wildfires?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So this has been in the state of Oregon, we've kind of been going round and round with this. There was a Central Oregon training, and then there was local training, which we had. And as we're expanding this and looking into what is really meeting and setting ourselves up for success to mitigate the emergencies that we have, it's like I described earlier, is this partnership that we've created with the Forest Service. And that was developed through my ops assistant, Brent Olson, and he's one of our division supervisors, trained at the Oregon State Fire Marshal's level as far as a division soup. And he developed this relationship with the Forest Service, and through that collaboration, it's opened the door for us to be able to go train our people at a whole nother level. And that's the unfortunate thing for us is it is in Central Oregon, right? So it's a little bit of travel for us. But like I said, it's all kind of based on weather, and we're just pretty excited that the door's been open for next week for us to start that process of starting to throw fire on the ground and learn what that does and how you combat fire with fire in a wildland setting, and get that next level of training, of hands-on training. And currently what we're in Clackamas Fire is we put in for a FEMA grant last year to train our people at all company officers to be trained at the engine boss level. We received that grant, and we're about halfway through this level of training currently. So everybody has taken the academic courses. Now we're just missing the hands-on piece. And so part of that funding is to be able to create this training and to help us set this up. So we are creating avenues, not only externally with strategic partners, but we're doing it with our internal knowledge as well, and getting our people set at a higher level of training. We're just happen to be right in the middle of it when this wildfire event happened.
Okay, Chief Charlton, this question is for you. What caused all these fires? Wind, power lines, arson, what?
Thank you, Brandon. I think with respect to the Riverside fire, I looked earlier this week. I believe they still have that as human caused, at least on the NCWeb website where I went to look. I know we're actively working with Oregon Department of Forestry to help support the investigation. Talking to our Fire Marshal, Sean Olson, late last week, I don't believe there was any determination of what had caused the Dowdy, the Unger, and the Wilhoit and Graves. I know ODF has taken a lead, and we're actively working to support them. We'll follow up tomorrow, unless Nick, if you know of any conclusion around those fires.
No, I just know that ODF has taken the lead, and that they're close is really what our Fire Marshal Olson said. So I don't have anything further.
And the other important piece too is just outside those wildfires, like was shared earlier, we still have a number of structure fires, vehicle fires, smaller vegetation fires. All of those have to be investigated as well.
Yeah. A total of about 212 fires that happened throughout the span of this event that we're trying to investigate.
Okay, Chief Charlton, an additional question for you. In regards to CERT, has it been clearly established as to the process for involving their support? An example of who initiates those first calls?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have the CERT program, which is led by our emergency manager. And this past year, we were able to bring the CERT program under our volunteer association, which helps better coordinate training and also gives them liability protection. So when they're out serving the community, if something happens, they are protected. So we think that has been a really positive step forward. As far as activating them, I know that they have done a smaller after action review around their involvement on these wildfires. Maybe I'd ask Chief Dieters, do you have any additional information on the notification, the coordination of those community volunteers as well?
You know, Chief, I don't have a lot of detail. I am under the presumption that they also use active 911 like we do for the career and volunteer. By bringing them into the under the volunteer association as auxiliary members. One of the driving factors behind that was so that when we do call them out, and let's say they're working for us, if they're not affiliated and they get hurt, it's on them, and we don't want anybody to lose any kind of livelihood or anything helping us. So bringing them under that fold allows us to provide insurance, workers' compensation while we call them out. And certainly being under the association, like I said, it's my presumption that they are have access to active 911 since they're affiliated.
And I think just as a follow-up, that is certainly an area that we need to strengthen. That is a program that has been around probably at least for 20 years. And we know there's members in the community who want to just help support during a disaster. They may not want to be a suppression volunteer or a support volunteer. So we have to continue to invest in CERT. I think this event really will bring to light how they're activated, how many more CERT members we certainly can use out of all of our communities, how to train them, how to organize. Again, the whole intent with CERT is you can take care of yourself, take care of your family, your neighbors, and then get out and help take care of your community. I think it's probably what we all do in a disaster, but we have a lot of room where I think we can improve the way that we're recruiting for and utilizing our CERT members, or those that are interested in being CERT members.
Okay, thank you. Steve, this one is for you. Can you provide general training hours for volunteers? In addition, volunteer monthly hours required to hold volunteer status. So to assume that's the initial, maybe the initial training required, and then beyond that, what's required to keep a sort of active status?
Yeah, so our academies, you know, they're held in-house and they run roughly about 5 months, and they're on 1 weeknight and then generally every other weekend, and they start in September. The amount of hours, I believe, is somewhere north of 250 hours that they will get in that academy. That's to get your Firefighter 1 certification, and then for the suppression group, they also have to have their Oregon EMT as well. And so that's a, you know, an almost a 9-month commitment going to a community college or somewhere. We don't have the ability to teach that in-house, and there are accelerated programs out there that you can get done. One thing that we have done is in the support member role, that is for someone that's wants to be in the fire service or wants to help in the community, and they perhaps don't have their EMT, so they join and they fill a support role for their first year, and while they're serving, they also go to school for an EMT basic, which we reimburse 100% for if they take that route. We've been fortunate over the years that we attract, you know, probably a good 70% of our applicants have already achieved their EMT or have already been working as volunteers or something like that. The way our program works after that, you know, you've got reoccurring education and continuing education, both for fire and for EMS, and those levels change depending on what level of certification you have. But we provide all of those opportunities for everyone. We track that. We are compliant with OSHA standards, which, you know, that's Occupational Safety and Health Administration, Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, or DPSST, National Fire Protection Association, NFPA. Those are all certifications that we are compliant with both career and volunteer on the suppression side. And obviously, you know, OHA, the Oregon Health Authority, for the medical part. So we stay compliant with all of that for all the individuals, both career and volunteer. And like I said, we provide all of that continuing education. So the SHIFT program, we probably almost 18 months ago or so, we've always had sort of a fill the shifts that best work for you kind of program. And what that created was competition for certain nights. And, you know, of course, a lot of people wanted to be here on a drill night and all that. So we went to the group, and one of the things that I think is sort of unique for Clackamas Fire is that quarterly, the fire chief and myself, and then a board director who's assigned as the liaison to the group, we meet and we call it a round table, and we talk about needs, wants, and what's working, what's not working. And we take that information back and we try to improve or change things if we can. Anyway, in one of those meetings, we reached out and asked what's going to better work for the group. And it was under the overwhelming response was that they wanted to be able to know when they were going to be here so that they could plan things and all of that. And they knew when their shifts were. So the shifts are, they average about 5 shifts a month. They're on a 6-day rotation. They're assigned to a shift, much like the career folks. They work A, B, C. The volunteers are A1, B, B1, and C, C1. And so they are assigned to that. They're assigned to a station, one of the 4 volunteer stations, and our 5th volunteer station is a support station in Damascus, the Centennial Park station. So that's for the support that don't live near a station to come in from home, which that group, the water tenders and rehabs, they still come from home. They don't fall under the same requirements as the suppression folks. So it works out to 5 shifts a month. They're 12-hour shifts. You're assigned there. We give them a calendar that marks out a 6-month period. They'll know when they're expected to be there. They have the freedom to trade amongst each other. If a night that they're going to be asked to be there doesn't work, they can trade it. And then they're also given 6 what we call PTO days, or personal time off, that they can use as they need it if something doesn't work out or they can't be there or they're not feeling well. So we really revamped the program, and what we've realized over time. And I myself, I started in the fire service over 20 years ago, and as a volunteer, and I'm sure it's true for all of us that have volunteered at any given time. I showed up for once a week for 7 weeks, and at the end of it, I got a set of turnouts and a pager, and they said, you go to the station when it goes off. It's certainly not like that anymore. And being compliant and meeting all the standards, it's not easy. But we find that having the people there at the stations, because we all know seconds count, and having them there ready to go to respond has been the best benefit to the community. And it's been a benefit to the individuals that are putting in the time, because we like to tell people that we want the fire department to be part of their life, don't make it their life. And so if they can schedule things and they know when they're going to be here, and it all seems to work out better. In regards to training, that's 6 hours a month. So it's roughly a 66-hour a month commitment to stay active in the program. And most of the training happens or can happen on a shift night. So we try to make it work out that way. It's not 100%, but it works. That's the goal, is to get it there so that there's less trips back.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Nick, this one's coming to you. As I understand it, both fires were scouted at the beginning for 2 days and not engaged, and water tenders waited nearby, manned and full, but unused. Is this the case, and why was it?
Okay, would you repeat that one more time for me, Brandon?
Yeah, absolutely. Question is, as I understand it, both fires were scouted at the beginning for 2 days and not engaged, and water tenders waited nearby, manned and full, but unused. Is this the case, and why was this?
Oh, that's simply not the case. We transitioned at points to structural protection, and so when we have structural protection, we do have water tenders on standby, right? And so then we apply water once the structure is at threat. But there was multiple fires throughout the first 72 hours that we were heavily engaged in initial attack, and we're putting fire out. That's just simply not the case. Was there certain areas of this fire, of these fires, where that was a strategical objective? Yeah, that happened. That happened in certain areas that we identified based on, off of Dowdy Road, a 1,500 acre fire. With the resources we have, we allocate accordingly where the main body of the fire is running, and so we strategically placed apparatus, and then we put apparatus with less forces with you, so to speak, in other areas, just based on where the most active fire and the biggest threat was that we perceived based on the ICs that were on each fire. To say that we just scouted fires for 2 days and didn't commence initial attack is just not the case. That's not true. To say that we scouted fire for 2 days, I will say we tried our best, but that's not even the truth. LCES is something, lookouts, communication, escape routes, and safety zones. That's something that we're taught at the base level of wildland fire training. And to tell you that happened 100% of the time during these fires would be a lie. It didn't. We failed to do that in certain areas. We didn't have a huge grasp of where every single fire was, and to be quite honest, the direction that it was going. We didn't have air recon to be able to see exactly what we were dealing with. Our closest air asset came from a battalion chief within our organization that's wife works for FLIR. That's how we got air assets initially, to get a read of actually where and map out where our fires were. And we did that through infrared. So we tried our best to scout as many fires. I know firsthand of a couple of community members that gave us good intel of where the fires were exactly. They hiked in and came to our ICs off of Riverside and relayed that information. But to say that all we did was scout fires and just sit idly by with our water tenders is just, it's not the case. We did aggressively fight fire, and then we did aggressively protect structures. And some of those instances, in some cases as well, the perception was that we were sitting idly by, but we weren't. The strategic objective was to protect that structure. And I know the perception exists and it's real. I'm not just trying to discredit it. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to let you know what the thought process is behind it. But to say that that's all we did for the first 2 days of 144 fires that we were mitigating, just isn't the case. We would have had thousands of homes burned down if that was the case. And we did not have thousands of homes burned down. And we didn't have thousands of homes burned down because of our community members and also because of our firefighters. So we tried our best to scout and to get read on exactly where the fire was, but based on the complexity and the resources we had, we just were not able to do it fully.
Okay. Steve Dieters, next question for you related to volunteers. I'm concerned about having IAFF involved in our firehouse, and with their approach of wanting all volunteers unionized, doesn't that mean you only really want volunteers under 30 that could potentially be hired?
Not true. That's not the case here. We are a combination department and have been for several years. I came from the volunteer ranks and into the career side for the Boring Fire District prior to merging with Clackamas. That was a combination department. I still feel that this is a combination department. Do we have a track record of hiring a lot of our volunteers? Yeah, absolutely. But I honestly don't get that sense at all from our members.
Okay, and there are still a number of questions related to the fire. So sort of in respect to the time we have left, and we still have an additional topic to cover, which is the proposed merger. We'll take 2 additional questions related to the fire at this point, and then we'll move on to the additional topic to cover, and then we can circle back at the end to answer any of those additional questions. So with that said, Steve, this is gonna be a question for you. It's a longer one, so I'll read the whole thing. Will personal politics and favoritism still be a factor in implementing and training volunteer corps? Because there's plenty of highly skilled people who have stepped away from volunteering or helping with CERT training in the past based on how some personnel treat unpaid or part-time members. This is not and never has been what's best for our community to keep skilled and highly motivated citizens involved in the safety of our people. What changes will be made to find and effectively utilize the strengths we have within our community to best serve everyone and remove barriers between paid personnel and volunteers?
So, you know, what would help is if there was a reference of time that they were, I don't know if they're talking about when it was Astacata fire or how we do things now, because I certainly would disagree that there's any kind of problem with career folks training volunteers. In fact, that's who does the training is the career folks. And like I said, we do have a track record of hiring a lot of people from that program. So it behooves us to train them to the standard that our district expects. As far as the community and keeping people that have skill levels, yeah, we're working on that as we talked before. I know that Chief Brown is working on some sort of way we can bring that together. We can keep that training, and with the addition of the Estacata Fire District to Clackamas Fire right now, it gives us a third option for training. There's a training center here that gives us a training center in Boring, and it gives us our training center in Clackamas. That's something we've never had before. We saw the value when Boring and Clackamas, the voters approved that annexation for that fire district. But having two centers, you can have a lot more training opportunities, and having a third one is even better. So I would envision that if we can get something working that makes sense, we can utilize those three training centers, and we often use volunteers as instructors as well, and they can get paid for doing that. We have no issue with that. A lot of them will do it just to do it on duty. We have career companies that help while they're on duty. We just use everything at our disposal that can be efficient to train and have people training each other. And so I specifically for Clackamas, I don't see that sort of thing that they're describing. And for Estacada, I can't speak to how that was and how that relationship was. Like I said, it doesn't make any sense for us to drive away the people that we need and that we want to be here. There are communities that we just can't serve with career companies, and the volunteers are serving in those communities, including this one. And that's just the way we do business. We try to get as much service providers as we can to those communities. So, and we can't do it if we're driving people away. That defeats the whole purpose. We've been nationally recognized for our program and for the accomplishments we've made over time. And the main thing is that the people that are in that program drive that program. It's not a whole lot of work from the rest of us, but we're engaged, we listen, and we learn from listening.
Great point, Steve.
Okay, thanks. We're going to take one additional question related to the fires, and then we'll move on to that second topic. But first, Don Allen Jr., I see your question on there. We'll come back to your merger-related question after the brief presentation if we don't answer within that. So we'll come back to you. That'll be the first question out of the chute for the merger-related topic. And then the last fire-related question for you, Nick, is in the future, if you were to work with locals, i.e. the Youngbergs, Davidsons, et cetera, will you require them to be Firefighter 1 certified before they can respond? Would they be required to maintain volunteer status, training hours, et cetera?
The beautiful thing with this is the sky's the limit for them. I think our simple requirement, and it's something that we can offer, and I go back to my paradigm, okay? I go back to a system that I came from where a public fire department worked well with their communities. And what we did in that community was we created a PAC test, right? And that is the base level requirement that to go to a wildfire that is required as an annual PAC test and a short training that can go on during that day, and being able to offer that for the Youngbergs and the Davidsons and the Adcocks and everyone else in the community that wants to be a part of that. I think that's something that's going to be crucial moving forward. To say that I'm going to require them to take a 40-hour S130 class and to become a firefighter type 1, It's just not realistic unless that's what they desire. If they desire that opportunity, then we'd create that opportunity for them. But I'm more interested in like Steve said, what's catering to their needs of what they want to, where they want to volunteer and what makes the most sense. Where the system I came from, we had people in play that we just put on a pack test every single year. And that way they had the base level knowledge and were able to respond to being a vehicle operator or a pilot or whatever. So it just really, it depends on the involvement at which they would like to get involved in. To say I would require them to have their firefighter type 1 is that's not something that we would require. It's going to be up to them and how involved they would like to get.
Nick, if I could just add just to that a little bit. For our program, we have suppression, we have support, and support has different requirements. They aren't staying the night at a fire station. They are true from home responders still. There's a different physical that has to happen and all that. And that's why I think we've leaned towards CERT. Because just because CERT doesn't have this component right now doesn't mean that it can't. We've just honestly, I don't think anybody's ever thought of adding that as a component, but why not? If you've got people that are skilled and all that, and that program doesn't have the requirements that we have for a suppression person or all that. But like Nick said, if at some point they desired to move to suppression, there's paths for that. We have that all built in. And, you know, the best scenario for us would be that someone would be a suppression volunteer and then decide, well, things are changing in my life. I'm going to be a water tender operator. Things are changing again. I'm going to be support, you know, and we'd get this longevity out of people. And then perhaps it's CERT after that. That would be the greatest scenario that we could come up with. But that's why I think CERT, just in my opinion, is a great avenue to explore. And this could be, you know, our program was considered groundbreaking 6-7 years ago on the way that we did things. And we receive, you know, and not that we're in it for accolades or anything, but we do receive quite a few compliments and calls from other agencies wanting to know how did we do it, you know, and honestly, including Astacata prior to any of the relationships, they were asking, how do you do it? So I think this could be one of those moments that we've developed something that maybe other communities, we just didn't know you were here, and we can't get out and meet you. So this is probably a great opportunity to expand on that and explore at least.
All right, thank you both. And thank you to the community for those the questions related to the fire. As I mentioned at the close, if we've still got some additional time, there's a couple of follow-up questions related to the fire. But before we move on to the next topic, that being the merger, we'll open it up to any of the directors who'd like to comment on the wildfires prior to moving on. So with that said, I'll defer to Director Silva or Oliver if there's anything you'd like to add.
Yes, so during the whole wildfire, we actually received phone calls and folks showed up to our house, and that's how we were able to pass information on to Chief Charlton and have his staff look into all of the things that Nick was reporting back to you guys today. And Ken also participated with a bunch of community members and tried to get as much information, because firefighters, like what Nick said, firefighters want to be their biggest critic. They want to do as good as they can, no matter where you go, whether it's in Idaho, Oregon, California, or even the great state of Portland, right? But this is the deal, right? The way we do it is we make mistakes and we learn from them, and we do things really well and we document them and we retrain on them. So I feel very confident that they are going forward and they're analyzing, they're using an outside company, and I think that they're going to make the region stronger when it comes to wildfire. And that's my opinion. You have anything to add?
I'd like to thank Nick for getting out into the public of our fire district and talking to the residents and getting their feedback. And then Matthew and I fielded lots of phone calls, and So it's good for you to be able to get out there and actually talk to them and be able to hear the things that we were hearing too.
Okay, thank you both. Director Searing, we'll go to you now.
Thank you. For those in the community that don't know me, I'm Jim Searing, and I started as a volunteer firefighter in 1982 with the Boring Fire. And 38 years later, I'm still serving. So I've been in Clackamas County serving in the fire service and have enjoyed every minute of it. I, as a director, believe in engaging with the community during this entire firefighter event. Many citizens contacted me via Facebook, texts, phone calls, citizens from both Astacata and other parts of Clackamas Fire. In addition, firefighters and volunteers contacted me, and I appreciated hearing all of those comments and questions. And I want to concur with my Estacata directors that passed a proclamation a few weeks ago honoring the citizen firefighter heroes. And thank you. It's nice that Chief Brown put names to those. So this is the first time I've heard a lot of the names of those people, and thank you to all of them. I also thank our career and volunteer firefighters and the work that they did. It was amazing and outstanding. It was difficult on them and a lot of their families. A lot of them live in Estacada and had their homes evacuated too, and their children moved out of town to grandpa and grandma's house. So thank you to everyone. By putting myself out there and being available to people. I did hear some comments. I thought I would share a few things. I concur with Chief Dieters. Joel Litke and his community watch group in Estacada did an amazing job. I've met with Joel a couple times. I saw him when he set up the Relief Effort Center and met him again after that, and they did an amazing job. That's what a community is all about. So thank you, Joel. Some lessons learned from what I've heard from people. The level 3 evac, when that was done, and entire communities of thousands of people were told evacuate, and the firefighters were told, while you evacuate, take the citizens with you. A lot of people probably heard that tape. Well, we've never really had training in my 38 years. It's never happened in Clackamas County, and to be out there with citizens who are choosing to stay and honorably defend their property, wow, that's something we've never really had to deal with before. And I think we learned a lot. In the future, we'll now engage with those people, connect with them, communicate them, utilize them. And I think we learned a lot from that. The community resources that are available, I'm really glad that Chief Brown is working on those programs. It's never been done. Estacada Fire didn't do it previous to this, and we didn't do it. And now I'm really glad to hear that those resource lists will be established. The CERT, I heard some questions from citizens regarding the CERT. I don't really know, but I think it's worth looking into. Did we really utilize the Estacada CERT team like they should have been? I don't know that we did. So I think we should do a little bit more work on that and improve that for the future. Immediately after the fires, the decision that our fire chief made to not have that community meeting, in hindsight, it was probably a bad decision. And I think that it would have been good to have that meeting, but I take part of that blame too, because when the discussions were going on, should we do it with the COVID, it just seemed difficult. So I take part of that responsibility too, in agreeing with that decision. Well, maybe, you know, but hey, we're taking action, and that's what's important. We're communicating in the ways that we can to the community, and I really thank everyone for engaging. But if that meeting still needs to happen, I think it's possible. If a lot of the people that Chief Brown has been talking with, if they still feel that we can have that meeting, whether it's live in a smaller venue, COVID restricted, or we do a Zoom meeting, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to keep the conversations going and learn everything we can. So those are just some things that I wanted to share, and I just thank everyone for this opportunity to engage.
Thank you, Jim. I'll now transition to Director Don Trotter.
Thank you. It's been very energizing to me to hear all these comments from everybody that's involved here this evening. And this has been a very tragic time with all these wildfires. But I've always believed there's something positive in every situation. Sometimes you just have to look a lot harder than others to find it. And one of the things that I hear is changes are being made. And there are changes to improve things that are already very good. Clackamas Fire is an accredited organization. And what that means is there are a national organization that comes in and evaluates the fire district to see if we're doing things correctly. And we have been accredited several times, including right now. And so we have been, people have said we're good, but we need to get better. And I think we're moving toward that.
Thank you, Don. Okay, so we'll transition to that second topic of being the proposed merger. And again, we'll start with that topic. I'm going to reread the basically general description that this is a public meeting, and then we'll transition to Chief Fred Charlton. So bear with me for a second while I read a paragraph, and we'll move on to the next topic. This is a public meeting of the Joint Oversight Committee made up of 2 elected members from both the Estacata and Clackamas Fire Board of Directors and Clackamas Fire staff. This oversight committee is a public body subject to public records and public meetings law. At the meeting today, the committee will be discussing 2 issues, the wildfire event and now the potential merger of Astacata Fire District and Clackamas Fire District. For the merger discussion, please understand that no staff time or district resources have been used to politically advocate for or against this measure. The districts have taken great care to provide only Secretary of State approved neutral and factual information regarding the merger. This information can be found at clackamasfire.com. The rules against political advocacy, however, do not apply to elected officials. This means that during the merger discussion, elected officials may express their own personal opinions and advocate for or against the merger. They may not and have not used any district resources, time, or staff to do so. So with that being said, Chief Charlton.
Thank you, Brandon. Again, welcome everyone. So the second topic tonight is to talk about the proposed merger between Clackamas Fire District number 1, and that is measure number 3-560, and Estacada Fire District number 69, which is measure 3-561. As Brandon noted, all of the information is found on the websites to include frequently asked questions, a number of informational videos, brochures. There's also a copy of a feasibility study that both fire districts engaged in around January of 2019, and that helped lead some of the conversations into the contract for service, which began January 1 of 2020. So leading up to that feasibility study, Clackamas and Estacada Fire began meeting through an interagency committee format, which is 2 elected officials and staff from both districts at the time in 2014, 2015. And there was a desire from Estacada Fire to look for Clackamas Fire to provide some fire prevention services to include public information officer responsibilities as well. So the boards agreed and entered into that intergovernmental agreement. And then as discussions continued and there was a desire to work more closely together, it was agreed that we would enter into having a feasibility study completed. Again, that was done in early 2019, and that is on the website. And then coming out of the feasibility study, it was decided to look at entering into an intergovernmental agreement, which would be known as a contract for service to provide full services between Clackamas Fire and Estacada Fire beginning January 1 of 2020. And that is the contract that we are in currently. So with that, again, thank you. All of the information is on the websites. And Brandon, what order would you like to go in?
Thanks, Fred. We'll now go to Director Silva, and then Oliver, if you'd like to take a moment.
Yes, you betcha. So do know that when we did the feasibility study, one of the things that we did was we were contracting for training and prevention. So one of the important parts is to hire a company to come in to see if what we're doing is right, or if it's wrong, or if it's working, or if there needs to be improvements. Well, when they were doing the whole thing, we had an outside company come in that had no association with Clackamas or Estacada fire. And then we had them do their study and come to find out not only were things working real well, but they could actually work even better, and a merger was proposed. So we went ahead and did that. Prior to this, I just want to reiterate a couple things. Prior, when we were Astacata Fire, we have a union contract with the IFF. And so we have an agreement with them, which is called minimum staffing of 2 firefighters on the rig. We could only afford to hire 3 firefighters, right, per shift, A, B, C, every 24 hours for 3 days, and they repeat their schedule. Well, one of the things was we suddenly realized that we could only maintain 3 people on duty 60% of the time. So 40% of the rest of the time, we only had 2 people on duty. So one of the important parts to understand is with firefighting, when you go to a house and it's on fire and you want to go in and put the fire out, well, you need 4 people on that initial rig because it rolls up. 2 people go in, they drag the hose in, they go in and put out the fire. The other 2 on the outside have to be there according to NFPA with the rule called 2 in, 2 out, to rescue those 2 firefighters that committed into the IDLH, the hazardous scene that's going on. So one of the things that we realized is, so when our fire engine would go before, they'd be waiting still for another volunteers that would pile down to the station, load up, and get to the scene, right? So we knew we needed 4 people on a rig, so that when that rig went and pulled up to that house, not only could the 2 firefighters get in real quick to put the fire out, but they could do a rescue too. So I think that was very important to understand, because we negotiated on behalf of the citizens of Estacada with the Interagency Committee and Chief Charlton, and we came to an agreement that we would do that, that they would do that if we did emerge. So that is one of the positive things that came out from that, and realize the fire prevention, which is critical for making the citizens safer, right? By doing fire inspection in commercial locations, educating our children, doing outreach. We only had 1 person part-time doing it. Now we have a whole team of folks that are dedicated full-time employees with Clackamas that are in the community helping us out. And so I have with Director Oliver and Director Bresco and Director Thorson, we have there is a publication that's in the paper released today, and I recommend for you to go to Astacada News and refer to it, because it really constrays how we've made a very data-driven decision to referendum this to the public to vote on. Okay, it was not something that we just pulled out of a bag or a hat. This was actually done over a period of time by looking at all alternatives and looking what would be the best for our citizens, what would make them as safe as possible. And this is what drove us to referendum it to the voters. So.
I'd like to speak a little bit from a volunteer standpoint. I was a volunteer at Estacada Fire for 25 years before I got elected to the board. And another thing that drove this decision to do more with Clackamas Fire over time and eventually work towards a merger was the lack of volunteer ranks. There was a point, I would say probably 2 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, where volunteers were leaving Estacada Fire, and a lot of that was the prior management of Estacada Fire really wasn't making it volunteer friendly. And when I looked at the hierarchy, we had lost quite a few of our lieutenants, volunteer lieutenants, over a period of time, and a few of those had been there longer than I had. But there was one time when I evaluated, looked at it, and at one point I was at like 23 years, and the next guy below me was at 9 years. So we had lost many, many years of volunteers that had been there quite a long time, that were either driven away or they chose to change because it wasn't much fun to come to the firehouse anymore. So that was a very disappointing thing to see. And volunteerism anyway across the United States has dropped. We've all seen that. But at Estacada Fire, it really dropped. And if you can't get that second rig out the door, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And we went down this road of this proposed merger to make sure that we can get 4-person staffing and also get other rigs coming from Eagle Creek area, you know, other areas of Clackamas Fire District, and even Colton. Colton's been a big help in our southern district. But we want to make sure that we can provide service to our customers in our fire district, and Clackamas Fire has the horsepower to do that.
And if I may add something, so when a house fire happens right now in Estacada, the bells go off. We have 23 firefighters on the way to the structure fire in Estacada, which we've never had before. And another point to make, because I've seen some people put out there, whether it's on Instagram or wherever they're communicating, that, oh, well, they won't keep it for. Well, I'll give you an instance. Beaver Creek merged with Clackamas, or annexed, 2 different terms, 2 different ways of doing it. But they did, and they only provided 3 people, because that was all the agreement. That's all the negotiation that happened. But then Clackamas, by looking at their district boundaries and seeing how Beaver Creek is at the end of their district and has a higher need to have a 4-person staffing, they didn't have people petition them. They didn't have people force them. They changed it to a 4-person staffing engine there. And I truly feel confident that Estacada will always stay 4-person staffing. I think that Clackamas has made a commitment, and I don't think they'll ever pull it. I just want to air that, since some people are saying, well, they'll go back down to 3 people. No, it's not happening. You don't go backwards. You only go forward. What's going to happen is the subdivisions are going to continue to grow. Next thing you know, they have a rescue and a 4-person engine. I mean, we don't know what the model will look like, but I'm very confident that they're going to take care of the needs of the community and continue to analyze what's needed out there. So, thanks.
Thank you both. Director Trotter, we'll go to you. And you're muted, Don.
Thank you. I was listening very well, but okay. I appreciate the comments that Matthew and Ken were making, and I agree with them from the Estacada standpoint. But I think that people ought to also understand that both sides of the table are going to benefit from this. Estacada Fire District residents and Clackamas Fire District residents. Because as they were talking about a 4-person station, yes, that station will also help benefit our response at Eagle Creek, Highland, Logan, Boring, and Clark. And that's also beneficial to both sides. In addition, we're going to have to keep expanding our services, because as Matthew said, that suburban is building. And so we're going to have to keep figuring out how better to provide service. And doing the merger and having another station Estacada manned 24/7 with 4 people is much less expensive than trying to figure out how and where to build a new fire station. So I think that's an advantage to the citizens in Clackamas Fire. And I think, as I said earlier, both sides are going to have something that's advantageous to them.
Thank you, Don. Director Searing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the comments from my colleagues. I agree 100%. As everyone from Clackamas knows, I'm a history buff, and I thought since the Estacada community may not even know who we really are, I thought I would take a couple minutes and explain. Clackamas Fire District 1 became a fire district in 1976 when Fire Chief John McAdoo from Multnomah Fire District number 12 and Fire Chief Harry Carpenter from Milwaukee Rural 56 stood behind two board of directors, and they chose the name Clackamas County Fire District number 1 and created a new fire district from those two districts. When I go back and read articles from that, in addition to articles of the merger in 1988 with Happy Valley District 54 and District 71, and I read the reasons that those 15, imagine having 15 directors in a room. It's bad enough with 10 that we went through, but all the same reasons. We need to staff together. We can't staff alone. Create efficiencies. Those 15 directors agreed to consolidate for a higher level of service. Later, 1991, I read an article to improve staffing. Consolidation will reduce duplication and allow our communities to be better staffed. Director Trotter and Chief Charlton came from Milwaukee. Another article, when Oak Lodge in Milwaukee, you read some of the reasons back then, 20 years ago, in an attempt to be a full service fire district. Milwaukee and its surrounding communities has spread themselves too thin. So all of those reasons, that the last 30 something years that 12 different fire departments became one, all those communities had some of the same issues that Estacata has today, and that other communities around us continue to have. Staffing problems, volunteer programs have changed, budget constraints, training requirements, everything changes, and we're just in a whole different world. So I just thought I would share that so that people can understand that who we are. We're just 12 little communities that are feeling the same exact issues as Estacata is now. And our history shows in past merger elections that our electorate generally approves mergers to partner with another agency, 70 to 80%. Well, will it be in this election? I don't know, but my guess is it'll probably be close to there. And the reason is because all those people remember when they were in the same exact situation. And they generally are partner oriented. So I thought I would throw that out. Earlier I mentioned I open myself up to a lot of questions and availability with citizens, and some of the questions and regarding facts that I've gotten in regards to the merger election. The big one I keep hearing, does this merger increase the firefighter staffing at the Estacata station, and is it guaranteed? Yes. Guaranteed means guaranteed. Permanent means permanent. Our history shows in Beaver Creek, we guaranteed 3 firefighters per shift in 1994. Well, now it's 4, and it's generally never been less than that. We guaranteed boring 4 years ago. We'll have 3 at the boring station, 3 at the Damascus station. Well, today it's 12 on duty during the day and 9 on duty at night, because Eagle Creek is a 40-hour week. In our history, it's always been more. Guaranteed means guaranteed. A 4-person staff at Estacata will result immediately from this next July 1st, and it'll never be less. It'll probably be more if we base that on our history. Guaranteed paramedic services, I've been asked that. Yes, we, by contract, have to guarantee ALS in every station. Estacata didn't prior, but we do. It's guaranteed. The regional assets, Director Silva mentioned that because we're accredited, Clackamas has to guarantee, and I got the numbers from Chief Brown the other day. We have to guarantee 23 firefighters are on the road for a residential fire and 27 firefighters on the road for commercial fires. That's not volunteers responding from home. That's not other jurisdictions that because we do have volunteer partners like Colton and other agencies around us. Those are the guaranteed numbers. Those are firefighters on the road that we guarantee, some coming from longer distances. The volunteers then are even a bonus. So the volunteers then, when they respond, when they're on duty at George and when they're on duty at Eagle Creek, and when Colton comes in, that's a bonus, and we have even more. So you can't get any better system than that. So those are guaranteed, those regional assets. The heavy rescue, the aerial truck that we send in, the specialty companies. There was a big rope rescue tech call on Highway 224 that I saw everybody talking about on Facebook. As everyone knows, we have a boat. We have water rescue techs. There was one day in the summer that our boat and the water rescue team went to Estacata 3 times in one day. There's been a large number of people on the Clackamas River. Well, so those millions of dollars of apparatus and equipment and training and all those, are those mutual aid? So if this didn't happen and Estacata ever reverted in the future, are these guaranteed? Well, you know, those open up good questions. I don't know that they are, because our citizens have adopted and paid for those teams, but those via the merger are all guaranteed, the same as the residents that live further down the Clackamas and in Oregon City. The increase in volunteer staffing, Chief Dieters talked a lot about that. We have 4 stations that have guaranteed volunteer staffing. George has become part of that family. Eagle Creek, Clarks, and Logan. There's a program in place. There's a current recruit academy going on as we speak that I understand. That number brings our total volunteers up to 100. Well, those 100 volunteers are what staff those community stations that have 0 career. And if they didn't have those volunteers, they wouldn't have anything. Eagle Creek is probably the best example. That's the goal. The last 3 months, we get reports, Director Trotter and I, every month at our board meetings, how many nights do they staff? Eagle Creek, 31 out of 31, 30 out of 30, and a bunch of those are 24-hour shifts. That's our goal. Clarks and Logan and George, since it's new to the system, George seems like it's 50%, maybe 1 month, and it was 50% the first week of September before the fire happened. Everything changed it. So right now it's tracking, you know, about there, but the goal would be 100%, the same as we can get all of them. So that is a guarantee. That is a program that we have and we believe in and we support. The tax rate, is it less? Yes. The Estacada tax rate is slightly less it's slightly higher than Clackamas's, and it would gradually go down. Is it a couple bucks? Is it small? Yes. But the fact is it's less. Less means less, and it's not an increase. The feasibility study, I think, was covered. There was a lot put into that. An outside consultant that gave us their best opinion, and they came up with one conclusion, and that was that a merger is in the best interest of not us, but the best interest of our taxpayers. Director Trotter said, the best interest of both taxpayer groups, because we look at it, all of them as one family. The budget numbers, there's been a lot of questions about, well, what is it really? Well, I have Estacada's approved budget that Clackamas is administering for our director colleagues in Estacada, and the annual revenue is $3,030,000. It's not the 4.9 million that is spreading around that is available on an annual basis. If it was 4.9 million annually, well, we probably wouldn't be talking here, because my colleagues would have had they would have had double the resources that they really had available to them. And the 3 million might sound like a lot, but when, as they know, the community they're a proud community, and they did a great job for many, many years administering their budget and getting everything out of it that they could. But you reach a point in time that when you have 3 chiefs and a staff, and you got to pay for dispatch service and HR, and costs go up, and on and on and on, pay for the fire trucks, equipment, train the volunteers. Well, all of a sudden now we know why. The fact is that my colleagues from Astacata could only guarantee 2 firefighters on duty, and they tried to staff with 3. That's the facts. This staffs with 4, and that's the fact. So it really, those numbers are the numbers. And so those are the questions that I have been getting, and trying my best to follow up with citizens via all of the different avenues. And I'll continue to do that to get the word out and get the facts, because that's important to me. So thank you.
Jim, thank you very much. We'll now open it up to questions, and we'll loop back around to Don Allen Jr. That's the original question that came in during the wildfire discussion. So Chief Charlton, this one is going to be for you. With the merger of Estacata and Clackamas Fire, what will be the financial impact of this merger? What will happen to the funds already in Estacata Fire's purse? What is the tax increase on the average household in Estacata due to this merger, if any? And I can break those down into individual questions if you'd like.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I'll do my very best. So if the proposed merger were to be affirmed by both districts and we legally integrate, then the financial resources and assets of Estacada Fire District get transferred to Clackamas Fire District. We most recently did this under the annexation of Boring Fire District number 59. So that would be the fire apparatus, the fire stations, any of the financial reserve funds would come to Clackamas Fire. Again, we would be reinvesting in community fire station, both at the George Community Fire Station, the Estacada Main Station, maintaining the apparatus, paying for all the personnel costs to include, as we've mentioned tonight, the increasing of the staffing from 3 to 4 firefighters. Estacada Fire does have a number of reserve funds found in their budget, and those reserve funds would be transferred as well. Again, the intent would be, as we do at Clackamas Fire, maintaining equipment, reinvesting in the services that we provide. As far as the tax rates, as Director Searing had mentioned, the current Estacada Fire permanent tax rate is $2.4029 per thousand, and the current Clackamas Fire District tax rate is $2.4012 per thousand. So the difference is fairly small. So we would have to do that calculation on an average home. We'd be happy to do that for somebody, or an individual could say, take the average home. If you say it's a $300,000 home, then you could figure out the difference between the two tax rates, and it's very small. So I don't know if I answered that 100%. I just don't have. I'm happy to do the math if you'd like, but that's the difference in the tax rate. And then I think there's maybe a third part to that question.
So one thing to really point out is it is small, but the amount of taxes you pay goes down. And I think that's the point that the constituents questioning is like, hey, what's going to happen to our taxes? The taxes are going to go down. It's a small amount, but you're going to pay less tax and you're going to get more service. Thanks.
Is there another part to that, Brandon? I apologize if
I believe you answered all those parts. Dawn, if that's not accurate, if you could just put the follow-up question in the comments for us, and we'll be sure to get back and answer that.
Hey, Brandon, can I say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Fred, you might explain to everybody what this tax rate is and why it will not change. What is a tax rate, and explain that they were frozen many years ago by the state. Okay.
Yeah, so thank you, Director Oliver. The state of Oregon did assign a permanent tax rate, in this case, to both Clackamas and Estacada fire districts. Those tax rates cannot be changed other than in the case of a legal integration. So in this case, when we're proposing to merge the two fire districts, there's a formula that the Department of Revenue works through, that the county also works through. They look at the total assessed value of both fire districts and then the permanent tax rates, and they do a calculation to determine what the new tax rate would be. And in this case, there's a significant enough difference between the assessed value of Clackamas Fire District and Estacada Fire District that tax rate, as you stated, will come down just slightly. So that Estacada fire tax rate comes down slightly. Other than that scenario, or an annexation or a consolidation, which would be 3 forms of a legal integration, there's not another way to change that permanent rate that's been assigned to the special districts.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. And we recognize we are coming up on 8 o'clock. However, I think there are a number of questions still have to be answered, and we have good engagement online. So I think we'll just continue on with answering those. The next question that's coming up is, do you still have community volunteers after taking over boring? So Steve, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. In the contract for service, when we first did it with boring, what a lot of people don't know is that previous to that, the Boring Volunteer Firefighter Association and the Clackamas Volunteer Firefighter Association had already merged together on their own. They had come together and formed and remained the Boring Volunteer Firefighters Association, and then through the annexation, they became the Clackamas Volunteer Firefighters Association. So not everybody came over. It's unrealistic to say that, but back then, Boring was going through the same thing that a lot of communities are going through. You've got just a few people that are doing a majority of the work, and it's hard to recruit. It's hard to get them to come from home, all of those things. And we were slowly changing the way that we did business, but it was almost too little too late. And I, for one, have worked on a 2-person fire engine and know what it's like to wait to see headlights because you've got a fire call to go through and there's nothing more disheartening than knowing that a community member is needing your help, but you can't get going just yet because you don't have the help. And so those two groups merged together. And honestly, they were sort of the driving force at that time to the elected officials as far as exploring doing something greater. So yeah, we had quite a few that made the transition over. And in the case of Astacata, the board directors, they decided to go to the contract do a contract for service. The fire chief, our wellness director, and our logistics director, we came out and held a meeting for all of the Estacada volunteers, and we had been told up until then that it was a large group, and when we got here, there were 15 people. We did talk with all 15. We explained what the requirements were, what it was going to be, and 9 of those people decided to come to Estacada. We were forewarned that that's all there was going to be, but we were kind of hoping that it would be more, but it was 4 suppression volunteers and 5 support, and they're still with us today, with the exception of one of the suppression who was hired at another agency, and we can't blame them for taking a job offer or an opportunity. So we've got a track record of most of the volunteers making the transition, and Boring was no different. Not all, but most.
Okay, Stephen, as a follow-up to that, and we may not have the exact answer to this, but how many paid firefighters and volunteers live in the Estacada area?
Yeah, gosh, I would have to speculate. I would hate to throw out some number. I know that they do live here. There are some career and volunteer. One thing to note that as Clackamas Fire, we've never advertised in the Estacada area or recruited in the Estacada area, nor did we do Sandy or anything like that. But I do know of 2 current volunteers that have been with us for more than a couple of years that do live in the area, but they volunteered for Clackamas. I don't know the reasoning behind that, but we did accept them. But I would have to speculate, and I'd hate to do that. I could certainly get that information and follow up with you, and you can get it to that person.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, Chief Charlton, this question is for you. What happened with all the lost personal information that was provided for CERT badges back in December? What is being done to ensure this kind of thing doesn't happen again?
And I'm sorry, Brandon, just one more time. I want Steve to listen to the question as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What happened with all the lost personal information that was provided for CERT badges back in December? what is being done to ensure this kind of thing doesn't happen again?
I do not know. Steve, can you weigh in on any loss of the personal information during the transition?
I have no clue about any of that. I've never heard this before. CERT information?
Yeah, that's what's being relayed. So we can certainly look into this and
Yeah.
and make contact and figure out what the story and the circumstances were with that.
Yep.
Okay, Director Silva, this question is for you. Is there an option to extend or renew current agreement for another year if the measure fails, so citizens can see changes and see CFD is truly invested in our community?
Well, so I think the first thing is, if the voters say no, it means no. So I think we would have to reach out to the voters and partner with them to figure out what they're looking for, you know. But I would imagine that if they want the theory of local control, but they'd be happy with Clackamas there, we'd have to go to, come July 1st of 2021, we'd have to go to the bargaining table and talk with them, you know, whether it's them or what. You know, we definitely would need to know why if voting yes makes sense. If you vote no, we know it's no. All right, done. Let's move forward. How are we going to do this? Let's partner. Let's figure out, what are we saying? Are you saying that you just want the board to be local and the firefighters can be Clackamas? I don't know why. First of all, I don't know why they would vote no, but I respect it. I mean, it's that's why we referended it to them. And so I don't know. We haven't even had this conversation, you know, because we figured that this was the right direction to do from the feasibility study and from the fact that it would be increased service delivery to the public. And we would have a lot more resources and apparatus available at our disposal. We'd have the water rescue team. We'd have high angle rescue. We'd have all sorts of different technical stuff that we don't provide. So, I mean, so I think now when the vote comes through, if it says no, we're going to have to do a lot of minds coming together and figure out how and what our public's looking for so that we carry their vote forward with what they're looking for. So, I mean, I don't know. But I imagine if we're going to contract with Clackamas, I'm sure I can sit across the table with Director Searing and Trotter, and we can discuss that, right? And figure how we're going to go forward. You know, what kind of partnership is it?
Director Searing.
Again, in our history, when Clackamas has done full contracts for service in these partnerships that have been done with communities in the past, never have they been less than 3 to 5 year contracts going into them. Usually they're, okay, we'll contract for 3 to 5 years. You know, even the original Clackamas 1 and Portland Fire Bureau was 5 years, and with Milwaukee Oak Lodge, it was 3 years, and with Boring, it was four, if not 5 years. Normally they're long. When we began this partnership with Astacata Fire, the IGA, we've been working together and had this partnership for 4 years. And then came the feasibility study, and we got through that. And that was even in 2018, 2 years ago. We built trust with each other that is, quite frankly, it's amazing. And it's something that the citizens don't get to see, what the trust that we built and what we have together. But when we put this together, the date for the contract expiration of next June, that was just arbitrary, a date to get us through the election. Well, let's make it a short contract. We'll put it out to the voters, both constituents. It just seemed, everything about it made sense. It was all positive. And we have to remember, this is a one issue referendum. In Oregon, it's a one issue referendum. Yes or a no. Do we want, each elector wants to merge effective this date, and that's it. That's the only question that's asked. We never built into it. When you read the explanatory statement in the voters pamphlet that everybody has, it doesn't say anything about, but what does the no vote mean? And do you have this option, B or C? Because frankly, we just never talked about it. It never seemed to be needed. And in our past, because contracts usually extended out years beyond an election opportunity, it just, so Director Silva, I agree, we would have to get together, obviously, and have a meeting. And quite frankly, what we know if an option for the Estacada community to recreate their own fire district again someday, is that an option? Anything's an option. Could that be done in 6 months? I'd quite frankly say it's impossible. So what would we do? I don't know. It would have to be discussed, and there's 10 directors that would be involved in that discussion, and staff and community members from both sides. And so I guess that's, I just wanted to add those points.
Okay, the next question is the treasurer for the yes vote stated that there would be 24/7, 365 staffing for the George station. Steve, what is the plan for that station? I know we've touched on it briefly, but if you could just briefly expand on the George specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, because we're under a contract, it's considered one of our volunteer stations, and we know that it's been difficult to staff in the past, and it doesn't have high call volume. We've never said it'd be 24/7 staffing up there. Right now, we shoot for about 50% of the month, and we're getting very, very close to that. We've found in our model that, highlighting and focusing on the Eagle Creek station with, it was said before, and Director Searing, not to correct you, but it's been longer than the last 3 months. You'd have to go back about 18 or 19 months to find a month that it wasn't 100% staffed by the volunteers, including we have a Friday day shift there. So Monday through Thursday, there's a career there, 8 to 6 on Fridays. There's a volunteer shift during the day. And then at 100% of the nights, there's a duty shift there. Oftentimes on weekends, it's a 24-hour shift. There's some folks that like to do the 24s, which we're happy with. But George specifically, it falls into that rotation. We've used lots of data that we've gotten from Estacada, and it does have low call volume, but we don't look at it that way. We look at it as these people need someone as well. And we've used the data to sort of try and predict the nights that the calls or the days that are most likely to happen. Now, that is not a for sure science. There's a little bit of voodoo in that. I get it, but we've been able to put people there. And just for an example, in June, the first night that we staffed it, those guys ran 4 calls for service. Was it an anomaly? Probably, but I'm thankful we had them there. And 3 of the 4 calls were in the George community, and the 4th was down here, and they were able to back up this engine. And so it's part of the plan, part of the program. And if this becomes part of the Clackamas Fire District, of course, we'll begin to evaluate a little bit deeper. But for right now, we shoot for about 50% coverage up there.
Director Searing?
I just thought I would add the treasurer of the Yes PAC is Connie, one of the most active and best community volunteers in the entire Estacada community that I've ever seen. Very active. It had to either be misinterpretation of the message or somehow, but never has anyone said George is going to be staffed 24/7. The Estacada main station, guaranteed 4 people, 24/7 forever. And the George is going to become part of, it already is, but the goal to George would be to get to the volunteer staffing level, just like Eagle Creek. That's the goal. It's not there yet, but it would be in the future.
Thank you. Chief Charlton, this next question is for you, and we are getting a number of questions, so we'll move through this next one. History has demonstrated that after such a merger, it is not uncommon that the local fire company is shut down and the community is left being served by the main body many miles away. That is my fear, and don't know if you can assure me that this will not happen in Estacada.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Director Searing has certainly alluded to it. It's in the contract for service. It's in our FAQs as far as the staffing that we currently have, the staffing model that we will be going to July 1 to include increasing the number of community volunteers in the George Station. So I apologize if there's concerns or fears out there that we would be shutting down a fire station, but we have only been expanding services probably for the last decade. So again, I see President or Director Searing unmuting, but again, our intent is to abide by everything that we have been sharing, which is upon legal integration, the 4-person staffing, and increasing the number of community volunteers.
Oh, could I add on to that, Chief? Regionalization and the opposite effect. And it has never been anything except that in our region. We are very unique. I have traveled around the country. Part of being an accredited fire department, we have team members that go around and help other fire departments try to be accredited and do self-assessment, and they want to do better and they need to improve and partner with their neighbors. And I've been from Connecticut to California and from Washington to Florida and helped other departments, and we are very unique. The 12 fire departments that have partnered together and now potentially a 13th doesn't happen everywhere in the country, but they strive. We are used as examples in the Clackamas County area around the country for fire departments to try to strive for. And never in our history has shutting a station down and diminishing service ever happened. It's always the opposite. City of Oregon City, one of those 12 fire departments, the first fire department west of the Mississippi River. You talk about tradition and a powerful history in a department. Those firefighters that used to work and came from Oregon City, they were the first fire department west of the Mississippi. It was the Oregon Territory, the end of the trail. They had a lot of pride. If you go into the downtown Oregon City station, it's like walking into a museum, all that history on the wall and all of the old engines. And Oregon City had difficulties that they built a fire station, paid for it with the bond, and all of a sudden, now we can't staff it. So they put a sign on the front of it, closed, we don't have the money to staff it. They partner with Clackamas because we're regional, and these other communities agreed, yes, we'll share with you, we'll help cover that station. So that merger allowed for that station to be staffed for the first time ever. Oregon City only had 2 stations. That was the 3rd one. Damascus, another example with Boring. The merger guaranteed and allowed a community fire station in Damascus to be served for the first time ever 24/7. So our history shows just opposite. These consolidations and communities sharing and partnering only opens stations and adds staffing and gives communities the ability to do more. We don't have, if you took those 12 fire departments, there was probably 20 fire chiefs, 12 chiefs and assistant chiefs. Well, those 20 fire chiefs, now we have, a few that you see on the screen, and all the rest of those positions are what allows us to put 4 people in a fire station in Estacada and 4 people in Beaver Creek and 12 people in Boring. And so it's just the power of collaboration is all I can say about that.
Thank you. The next question, Chief Charlton, we'll start with you. Will there still be any Estacada Eagle Creek citizens on the board so local citizens feel comfortable approaching the board and feel our community has a voice?
Sure. Thank you. That's a great question. If we look at this proposed merger with the timeline, I will relate it to our last experience, which was the annexation of Boring Fire District number 59. In that case, which is very similar to this one, is there was an election held in November. And then after that election, which in the Boring case was affirmed within both districts. We worked hard to complete all of the requirements of legal integration prior to March 1st. Right after March 1st was the deadline for a number of open, I believe it was 2 open positions, or positions that were going to be potentially open on the Clackamas Fire District Board. So we made sure that the requirements for legal integration were completed, and that way at that time, any resident of Clackamas or then Boring Fire District would have the opportunity to run for either one of those open board positions. We have the same timeline and the same scenario around this proposed merger, where Clackamas Fire does have 2 positions on the current Clackamas Fire Board, which will be voted on in May of 2021. So the proposed timeline around the proposed merger will be to complete all of the requirements of legal integration, and then allow residents to apply for and run for either one or both of those positions in May of 2021. So please, Director Trotter or Searing, please add anything, but I'm just sort of restating what we had done with Boring, and the timeline appears to be lining up almost exactly.
Matthew, we'll go to you.
Can I add? So I think it should be duly noted that one of your current board directors is a resident of Eagle Creek. Am I correct?
Yes, our board president, yes.
Yes. Okay. And then 2 positions are coming open, of course, for this next term. So the 2 positions are sunsetting on June 30th, and a new person, if somebody runs for it, will start July 1st at the same time that the official 4-person staffing and so on.
Yes, the 2 positions will come in to begin serving their term July 1 of 2021. Yes, that's correct.
And I also, Monday night at our city council meeting, I announced that if this is a yes vote and we merge, that I will be running for a seat at the Clackamas Fire Board next year.
Jim, did you have something to add?
Yeah, everything that's been said is correct regarding the dates. We have 2 positions, 2 board positions open in that May election. When this exact time period happened 4 years ago, and the board positions opened up, Boring Fire District had 3 citizens file for one of the positions and 1 citizen file for the other position. So that community became real active, and one of them won, Director Cross. And so it was a real active, energized, great election. And I would envision it to be the same this time. If Astacata citizens and directors chose to run, that's great, because my platform, when I ran for the board the last 2 times, people heard me say it. I, in an agency like we are, have believe in the rural representation, and I stand up there and say it, that we always need to make sure that we have directors that are representing the rural areas. It's just as important as Milwaukee and Oregon City, and I believe in that, and we currently do. But Director Trotter would attest, because I've heard him say it many times, and he says it the best, that we do a great job of representing all of our communities. So we get out and go. I was in Estacada the day that Joel Litke recognized police and fire, and we had our firefighters there, and myself and one of our volunteers went, and I was proud to stand there in the Veterans Park and accept the recognition by the community. And we get out and we get involved in the community. So the local control, you're too big to work with communities, I've never bought that, because we really try hard to get out and work in the communities, and I think we do a good job of that. And if Estacada residents would get involved in being an elected official, it's awesome. It would be great. So.
Okay, thank you. The next question, how will Clackamas Fire justify the budget needed to serve Estacada with very little population? As noted, new equipment is needed. Thank you for the opportunity to ask questions. Are there currently 4 firefighters on staff currently? And is it based off population? So we'll break that down. Chief Charlton, I'll give you the first part of that question. I'll reread it. How will Clackamas Fire justify the budget needed to serve Estacata with very little population?
Well, I think with the budget, and we spoke to it tonight, and I believe it was Director Syrian that talked about during a legal integration, really the opportunity is to find efficiencies, both in the way that we provide service delivery and then financial efficiencies as well. So again, we would look to the reoccurring revenue that Estacada Fire receives, and we would be able to staff as we have staffed now and provide the other resources necessary to maintain that service delivery. So I think the second part of that question, or maybe part of it, would be around, do we tie staffing necessarily to population? We do not. We tie staffing to community risk, a standard of cover. We look at the assembly of an effective response force, the needs within that community. And again, I think we've heard tonight that there is strong justification and need for that staffing to include volunteer staffing at the George Road station as well.
Thank you. And there was a third part in there, and I believe we touched on it earlier, but are there currently 4 firefighters on staff? The answer to that is no, there are currently 3. However, within the terms of the contract, that goes to 4 effective July 1st of 2021. So we'll move on to the next question here. Give me a moment.
Chief Searing has a question.
In regards to that last question, we haven't really talked about it tonight. What does 4-person staffing mean? Right now, we have 3 firefighters on duty 24/7 at the Estacada station. Really, in a more remote community, that's not acceptable because the goal is 4. In the United States, there's an OSHA requirement called 2 in, 2 out. Plain and simple, if you don't have 4 firefighters on a first engine that pulls up to a house, barring a rescue, they do not go in. You can't operate efficiently. And in a lot of departments, they try, they have volunteers that respond to the station, like Steve talked about, Boring did, and even what Estacada did. That's great, but still, that the 2 in, 2 out, the fact is, first engine that pulls up, if you don't have 4, you don't go in. In this OSHA requirement, it's an NFPA 1710 standard to try to meet, and I can't underestimate how important 4-person staffing means. We're not even doing it now as we speak, but because of the efficiencies that this election creates, it allows it to happen permanently beginning July 1st. And the volunteer response, like we mentioned earlier, that come from George and Eagle Creek, and the career companies that come from the other stations all help that. But it's very important in today's fire service to get 4 people on as many engines as you can, especially in the remote areas. So I thought I would mention that.
Thank you. And this next question, we'll start with Director Silva, because they're asking for a little clarification, but then maybe Nick, if you could touch it from the operational perspective, that would be helpful as well. The question is, so if merge doesn't happen, is Matthew trying to say Estacada Fire would not get water rescue or high angle rescue resources if incident happens within Estacada Fire district boundaries? So Matthew?
Yeah, so first of all, we signed a contract with Clackamas Fire District to provide all services until July 1st of 2021. So even if the vote went down, we would still continue to get the exact same amount of service that we contracted them for, so we would continue to get it. Now, I think it's important for everybody to understand what mutual aid agreements are. Okay, so there's a standard with fire departments that, if you're able to provide the fire department one piece of apparatus, And like if they have a big call going and they want somebody to come, they'll provide you one piece, right? It's like almost a gentleman's agreement, but it's put in writing. Okay, I'll give you the one engine that I have. If you have a greater alarm, you need it, and because I'm giving you one, I'll give you one back. So it's a thing. So what you got to understand is you can make requests, but if they have, this is the thing. I mean, I hate to put it this way, but let's say Happy Valley that pays, if you took them back when they were Happy Valley, they have a bigger budget and they're pouring all these millions and millions and millions of dollars. And let's say how much ever the budget was for Clackamas, $180 million prior to Estacata going into it. And then we pull out. They've also got to justify it with their constituents that they're going to give their one piece of vital equipment and they're going to send it up the river 4 or 5 times. I don't know what that would look like. I think it would be if we started our own fire department, we would have to sit down to the table and it'd have to be negotiated because you do mutual aid agreements. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. Okay, so I just want to make sure that's clear. And then Chief Brown, if you want to talk a little bit about mutual aid agreements, I mean, because that's basically what this nails down to, you know, but until July 1st of 2021, regardless of the vote, we have 100% committed Clackamas Fire.
Thank you, Director Silva. And I think you articulated that very well. Here's something that I think the citizens need to know about Clackamas Fire is that we're in the business of saving lives, okay? And regardless of where you are at, that's our business, is to go save lives. And so if this thing were to go to a no vote, my hope and my desire would be that there would be a partnership and a team still in that area to where they didn't ask for us not to respond. The simple fact is for some of our portions, for rope rescue, we're the Clackamas County Rope Rescue Team. And so we respond to anywhere in Clackamas County that we are requested. For the water rescue, it's the Clackamas County Water Rescue Consortium that through CCSO and everybody, we respond everywhere in Clackamas County. Here's the piece to add on to what Director Silva is speaking to, though. It's my job as the operations chief to look at the community as a whole and to strategically place resources according to that. So currently we've moved with knowing that we were moving forward in this path with Astacata. We moved our water rescue team further east so that response times would be better to that portion in Estacada. If this, for instance, went to a no vote, my job is to look at the community and the community we serve. And so to say that the water rescue team would be positioned where they currently are, I can't say that that's a reality. And in technical rescue calls of nature, as Director Silva will back, its time is of the essence. And so so this is as we move forward, I care about one thing, and that's saving lives. And there is the mutual aid piece, and there is the politics behind collaboration and working together that Director Steering and Chief Charlton could speak to. But on an operation perspective here, that's our number one focus, and that's our number one focus of the community as a whole. And so that's where the mutual aid agreements come in and where we're requested we go. But I will say that there's a history of departments not wanting the resources we have. For hazardous materials, we provide hazardous materials for Clackamas Fire. We're not a county resource at that point as far as on the run cards. But if this goes through, then there would be hazardous materials response. You know, so it's. I hope I was able to articulate the point there. Director Silva, did I miss anything, or Director Searing?
I was just going to add, I concur with Director Silva and what Chief Brown said. In our history, these 12 communities that voted to come together to form who we are today, never has there ever been a no vote. Every community always voted yes, in most cases by landslide affirmative yes vote, because they wanted higher service. They wanted more staffing. They didn't want to worry about all the things that we've talked about that you've heard tonight. So we would be in uncharted territory if there were a no vote on either side, frankly, and there would be lots to talk about because it's never happened. There's never been a no vote, and we've never had a contract expire so close to an election date, and with the potential catastrophic effects that could happen if we're not just going to walk away. The community isn't just going to be left abandoned. There's lots to do. The employees are all now employees with Clackamas. The volunteers are there. It would we'd be in uncharted territory trying to figure it out, frankly, and it would take some time. How long? I don't know, because this never happened. But I would just hope that my only goal, I believe in the will of the people more than anyone around, and I just hope that people are informed, that they know what the facts are, and they know that that voting yes means more firefighters, plain and simple. So if you vote no, hopefully it's for good reasons that you are looking at and trying to analyze in a different way. But
Chief Searing, I want to speak, and I just want to make sure I articulated myself correctly here. Mutual aid wise is always a 1-for-1. If I go I go outside of that, I have to explain to my board of directors of, okay, why are we sending more resources than what we're receiving? And every single board report during the month, that's a question that they look at our mutual aid responses, and they see where it's making sense, where it's a win-win for both communities, and if it's starting to get off kilter, they ask why. But I also want citizens to understand that we're in the life safety business, and our board of directors understand that as well. And we exist to save lives. And so I have never in the history of Clackamas Fire that I've been here, have we ever said that somebody's life's on the line, but we're not going to go to that call because we're not mutual aiding, right? There has been where we've had to turn down calls because we've had calls for service in our own district. We've had water rescue calls or rope rescue calls in our own district to where we couldn't send resources to, but never, we're in the business of saving lives. I want to put the community at ease for that, regardless of what happens.
Okay, well, the next question we'll move to, we'll start with Chief Charlton on this. Why are the Estacata Fire Board members that are a no vote on the merger not present at this meeting?
I don't know. I can't answer that. I apologize. I think it's a public meeting, so I don't know. I don't have an answer.
So may I we thought it was very important to get the Interagency Committee together, and then at a time of right now, we wanted to make sure that it was going to be transparent. So so that everybody that's watching knows, each board elected 2 board directors to the Interagency Committee, and then we've been tasked with meeting and reporting back to the board. And the reason you do 2 members is that so that they can have a meeting without having the whole public there. Anytime you get more than 2 board directors together, it becomes because you can take a vote with 3 or more board directors. So committees are normally formed with 1 to 2 board directors from each district. So the Astacata Fire Board appointed myself and Ken to be the representatives for these meetings that have been going on for the last 18-24 months. And then Director Trotter and Searing were appointed by the Clackamas Fire Board to meet with us and talk about all this with the fire chief. And then we would go back and report exactly what occurred, all data that would be coming out, and whatever occurred in the meeting. So this meeting is actually being aired, and normally it wouldn't be required to be aired because we're discussing of where we are, what's happening, what's the contract of service looking like, and so on. So hopefully that answers that.
Okay, Okay, the next question, would Clackamas Fire be required to always keep Estacada Station 330 staffed with 4, or is this just a promise? Chief Brown.
It's a great question. It goes back to what my stance is. And as Chief Charlton delegates that response to me and over all the fire district, our priority is getting adequate resources to emergencies. And the city of Estacada is a farther out response time. So having 4-person staffing at that station is crucial for us and our operation and our culture here at Clackamas Fire of extinguishment for residential structure fires, and our culture for medical calls that we have one of the highest rates in the Northwest, on the western half of the United States, as far as save rates for cardiac arrests. And we have one of the highest success rates of performing and getting residential victims that are trapped inside structures and pulling them out. We've had a high amount of that, and that's based on our culture of extinguishment and getting inside and fighting structure fires. We have to have that with 4-person staffing. I have to have 2 people outside while I commit that interior fire attack with 2. That's crucial for me as an operations chief. And as I allocate resources, it's crucial for me. And based on where resources that are coming in, like Director Searing and Board President Silva mentioned, we have 23 for a first alarm residential structure fire and 27 for a commercial structure fire, but they're coming from distances away. So getting an interior fire attack and having 4 people to do that is crucial to our success on the fire ground, because seconds count in those situations. When somebody is not breathing, seconds count. Getting on the chest and being able to intubate people, seconds count. And it's always better with 4 people. 4 people is proven. It's the NFPA standard. That's the direction we want to go as a fire district for all of our stations. And for Estacada, that's why Boring has 4 people. It's why Beaver Creek has 4 people. We need that based on where those stations are strategically placed. We need to have it at 4-person staffing. So to answer your question in a long roundabout explanation, I just want to make sure you understand the thought process. 4-person staffing is what we're going to be doing at Estacada.
Okay, the next question, we probably touched on it a little bit, but there's a specific piece in here. If Estacada does not agree to emerge, does your current staff leave? And does Estacada have to get a new set of volunteers and staff? Director Silva might be best suited for you.
Well, like Director Searing talked about, we have not even talked about it. So I mean, we assumed that this was the right thing to be doing, referending it to the public. And so we're looking for the public to tell us, but I think we put a lot of facts out there that says that this would be the best service delivery in Estacada, because they would be providing 4 people 24/7 with 1 person being a paramedic. Now, if the voters tell me no, we'll figure something out. Nobody's quitting. Nobody's going, away. We'll just have to figure it out. And so I don't have the answer. I mean, I don't think we even expected it. Like Director Searing said, 12 mergers. It was never even a thing. It's like it hasn't even been a thought process. I mean, we were assuming that we were reading the facts, delivering the facts to the public, and that it would pass. So I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I'm sure we're definitely going to get to the table. I mean, we've already talked about having an interagency meeting directly right after the vote so that we could get together and start talking about this. And then we'll probably be putting a couple emergency board meetings together so that we can now talk about this. So, and inviting the public in to weigh in, because if the public said no, I want to know why. Was it because of wildfires? Because I don't think anybody's been unhappy until then, but I mean, I don't know. That's why I want to wait for the vote. And then if the vote happens, we're going to move quick. We're going to move quick. We're going to figure out what the needs of the community is and what the community wants for them to actually vote it down. But I still think if the facts that we're giving out right now is the truth, you are going to get a better fire service for less money, a little less money, but at the same token, We have never, ever been able to maintain 4 people 24/7, guaranteed paramedic. We've never been able to do that. And that's going to happen with all the other resources. Not one engine coming from Clackamas. We're going to have 4 more coming. So, I mean, this is the thing. I think it's, I don't have the answer. So, but we will have the answer if you tell us and guide us, and then we meet with you and you tell us why you're voting no, then we'll pick it up. I mean, you're going to, like Chief Brown says, Astacata Fire is into fire protection, suppression, and saving lives. We always have been. I was a volunteer here in the 80s and 90s. It'll continue to go on, trust me. Nobody's going to quit. Nobody's going to walk away. Nobody's going to be pissed off. We're just asking you to read the facts, make the best decision, but in a conscious decision, and beware of any misleading facts. So I hope that answers it. And I apologize that I don't have those answers, but really, we really have it as a board or an interagency committee. We really have not talked about it. So.
Director Searing?
I concur with Director Silva, and I think these questions that people in the community have about what happens if there's a no vote, it's really difficult. Like my colleague stated, it hasn't been talked about. The questions of contract extended. I've seen the city of Estacada city council group was asked questions about different issues, and this was one of them. What do you think about this 3-561? And several of them stated, well, you know, we had a big disaster. It's been a COVID year. We don't feel that Clackamas Fire has even had the opportunity to even show what they are yet. Well, I agree with that, because we would have been at the 4th of July festival and the Easter egg hunt and all of the events that we do in the communities, because if there's anything we do great is that we do an awesome job. We're volunteers. We staff every community event, and we send apparatus, aerial trucks, and put flags up, and the community loves. We are really good at that. Well, we haven't had the opportunity to do that this year because of all these reasons. So I like those comments that we haven't even had the opportunity to show what we're all about. But if it happens, like I mentioned before, we're in uncharted territory, and I don't know what the end result would be. There's things that people haven't even thought of. I have, because I was the chief examiner for the Civil Service Commission for a long, long time. Estacada doesn't have a Civil Service Commission. A Civil Service Commission would have to be established for them to start up, and even just doing that, assembling a commission and appointments and a chief examiner, and all that has to be done, months and months of work and time just to announce a firefighter test and officer tests, higher level tests, to figure all of those processes out. There's legal requirements in Oregon, civil service laws about posting times and all that. Well, again, it's never happened for us, and frankly, nowhere that I've ever heard of that department was created from scratch. And the only reason I'm saying this is because it's important to think about the difficulties, if that is even possible, how long it would take to do it. And we would all be part of that picture to try to figure that out, should either side vote no. It's not just Estacada. The Clackamas residents have a change of heart compared to the 70-80% that they've had over all these years, and for whatever reason, hey, you know, this time we're not willing to partner, and for whatever reason they may say no, and I doubt it, but they could. So there would be lots to talk about and to figure out where that road would go.
Okay, this next question, Chief Brown, it's a short question. Was Beaver Creek Fire Station closed and moved out of the area? And I don't have a time reference to what they're asking about specifically. And you're muted.
I'm muted. I'm sorry. Were they specifically talking about during the wildfire event, or I'm confused on the question, Brandon.
It doesn't look as though it's related to the wildfire event. It just says, was the Beaver Creek Fire Station closed and moved out of the area?
Okay, so Beaver Creek Fire Station, when we merged, or when we annexed with, I'm sorry, I don't want to, we annexed with Beaver Creek, correct?
Well, and Director Searing, you were, I believe, assigned to that station at the time. So you might have the historical reference there.
Well, I received a question from a citizen during the fire that lived in Beaver Creek. And the question may be, was the station during the level 3 evacuated? I'm guessing it's probably a question related to if we have fire stations in the level 3 evac zone areas that we moved firefighters out temporarily.
Okay, so let me speak to both then, just in case, so I can answer both sides.
Okay.
When we became one department with Beaver Creek and Clackamas Fire, they rebuilt the station up the street from where the current station was. So if you're referencing then, they were in the station, rebuilt a new station, and then they moved from that station to the new station, which is currently on Beaver Creek. If you're speaking to the wildfire event, we did pull the normal station crews when they were on level 3 evacuation. With that said, I backstaffed it with Task Force 51, which was made up of Clackamas Fire, which consisted of a type 3, 2 type 1 engines, strike team leader, and so they were staged at that station until crews came back on duty, and then from there they staged at Station 13. So the regular crews were moved from and the apparatus that was standby apparatus was moved out of, all capital assets were moved from that Beaver Creek station on the level 3 evacuation. But I piggybacked it with Clackamas Fire's Task Force 51 from the Oregon State Fire Marshal's team based on their strategic location and where they could respond to and from.
And the next question, Clark's Fire had 1 career firefighter per shift for 24/7, and after the merge with Clackamas, did Clark's Fire lose that staffing? Director Searing?
Beaver Creek Fire District struggled financially. Beaver Creek had 1 firefighter on duty per shift, 24 hours a day. Imagine that. You don't see that very often. They had 1 on duty, ran into difficulties, so much so that they had engine difficulties and they didn't have an engine even to replace the one when it broke down. So when that merge happened, their 1 per shift turned into 3 overnight, and now it's 4. So kind of the example again, you go from 1 on duty at all times with students and volunteers to 3, and now it's 4. Beaver Creek had an awesome volunteer program. When we merged in '94, there was 35 volunteers that responded to the station in Beaver Creek. A lot of them were younger kids. We hired probably 20 of them, and they work here today. Some of our chief officers are those Beaver Creek volunteers and station captains. And for the same reasons that other communities, they ran out of people willing to volunteer for the community, and it was just difficult. Well, a few years later, Clark's, the answer is yes. Clark's Fire District had 1, and one of those employees, one of those 3 still works here today. They had a part-time volunteer chief, and those 1 career firefighters were compensated at a lower level. It was just kind of a different economical scale, I guess you could say. And when the Clark's merger happened in, I believe, 97 or 98, we actually staffed the station like we do Eagle Creek now. We tried 2 firefighters on duty Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And we tried that for a while. Economically, call volume wise, it just didn't work. And Beaver Creek, when the station, like Chief Brown said, the station moved a mile from Beaver Creek, built a new station closer to Clark's. And because of that move, and putting 4 firefighters in one station, it just made sense. And then Clark's became one of our volunteer stations to do duty shifts. So it was kind of an evolution. The question was asked, and that's really, that's what happened in the case of Clark's. They're now staffed with volunteers that do duty shifts on nights and weekends.
Okay, the next question that is coming through for Nick would be, will Estacada have the same staff on A, B, and C shift if the merger occurs?
I would love to tell you that they would. Right now, it's a mix of personnel, and based on promotional opportunities, I can't guarantee that you know, if a firefighter takes an apparatus operator test, that they would be able to go back to the Estacada station. They might go to one of the other openings of the fire station, or personnel put in for shift changes all the time. So I can't promise you that the same people that are currently staffed there, which is currently Captain Heitschmidt is the leader of the station, and he's been with Clackamas Fire for 20 plus years. I see him staying there. He loves the community fire station. But to answer your question, I can't guarantee that the same staff that is currently there would be there as well. Right now, it's a mix of Estacada, original Estacada personnel, and a mix of Clackamas Fire personnel.
Okay, and Chief Brown, a follow-up to that question: with the increased number of homes and increased driving speeds on Highway 211 between Estacada and Malala that have resulted in more road accidents, do you see staffing numbers increase beyond 4 per station or truck? I think specific to Estacada.
Yeah, so I think that's going to truly depend on call volume, and that's really what dictates that to me. I think our next step is looking at enhancing our staffing levels in the Eagle Creek area and Redland Road area, which help in second calls to those to Estacada. So it's a call volume based and a algorithm that currently right now, with the amount of growth that is going in Estacada, I believe Director Silva, didn't you say that Estacada is one of the fastest growing cities in
Oregon.
In Oregon? So as population grows, call volume increases, and as call volume increases, the need for more resources is imperative. So that really is what dictates that.
Okay, thanks. Give me a moment here while we scroll through for additional questions here. Okay, here's a question. We'll start with the directors. How is it that Estacada Fire employees became permanent Clackamas Fire employees without civil service testing? I understand them working there now under contract, but if merge fails, why would Estacada Fire not get all their resources back, including employees? Director Searing?
Under full contract for services, that's how they work. Under a full contract for service, generally the employees from one entity per ORS following the law become employees of the other agency, and that takes effect during the entire length of a contract for service. That's how it's always worked for us, and until the time that a legal integration occurs, then generally that's how it is. It's happened in every case in our whole history. In this case, those 9 individuals became employees of Clackamas, and they still are today. ORS also allows them, if something happens and a legal integration in the future doesn't occur, it gives them the opportunity, and they have to sign a document do they want to go back or not? They have that opportunity. And in our past, it's never happened. So would people, I guess I say, when I say that, the Portland, Clackamas 1 and the Oregon City, Tualatin Valley, when Tualatin Valley left Oregon City. So we, in other ways, have had employees exercise the right to go back. But in this case, they would have that opportunity. Would they take it? Conversations and messages I've got from them say no, they wouldn't take that opportunity. They would choose to stay, but that, is ultimately their decision that they would have to make at that time. So that's what I know about that.
Okay, Chief Charlton or Chief Brown, are they going to relocate the Estacata Fire Station? Any plans for the Estacata Fire Station to move?
Not that I'm aware of. That's not a conversation that we have had with the Estacada Fire Board of Directors. So no, there's no plans. We haven't had that conversation.
Could I weigh in real quick? So basically, we've done a seismic upgrade and we've done so many improvements to that building. We're committed. So we did go out to the voters to replace that station, and they said no. And we said, okay, 4 tons. Well, so what we've done is we applied for some grants. We did all the seismic upgrade. We invested some of our reserve money in the building reserve fund, and we've upgraded with heating systems and required bathroom and living facilities for the firefighters. And so I think it's prepared to be a fire station. And I think it would suffice as a fire station for Clackamas. If the merger goes forward, I wouldn't see a reason to move. It's fully functioning and it's up to speed.
Okay, Chief Brown, this question is somewhat related to the wildfires, but also a merger question. With the annex of Estacada into Clackamas Fire, what is your plan to expand beyond structure preservation and train and equip for wildland firefighting? I know you briefly touched on that earlier, but maybe a brief explanation on that as well.
Yeah, thanks. So based on what I've gotten from customer feedback, from internal feedback from our people, there's an increase of level of training that we obviously need to hit on for these kind of events. So currently what we're doing is through partnerships with the U.S. Forest Service. We are starting to enhance that relationship and starting to partner with the people that do this kind of stuff every single day. And so we're sending crews next week down to Central Oregon to start working on backfire operations, which is, in a wildland setting like this, is a tactic that, when implemented correctly, puts out a lot of fire. You fight fire with fire. And so taking advantage of opportunities like this is crucial. The next step to this is looking at our fleet. Talking with the fire chief and members of the fire district and the community, I mean, we didn't have enough Type 6 vehicles. We didn't have enough Type 3 vehicles. So looking at what we staff and our staffing model of where to place apparatus and purchasing new apparatus is going to be crucial for us moving forward. The next step to this is that community involvement and formulating the Clackamas Fire resource list, looking into expanding opportunities for a wildland group, whether that's through CERT or whatever that looks like moving forward, I think is going to be crucial. And I go back to something that Don Henlon said to me. He said, lessons are supposed to be learned from events like this, okay? And that's crucial. And it's not just in our strategies and tactics, but it's in the apparatus and the equipment that we have. And so we are looking at all levels of this, and we're hoping that this AAR shoots holes in areas that we're not thinking about, and we know it will, from people that have done this wildland urban interface for their whole career. We faced a fire that they see in California every single year, and that was the type of fire that we faced here. It was the biggest incident in the state of Oregon, and it was the priority number one as far as all the resources because of the size of fire that it was and the impact it had to the communities. So so looking at those types of things are going to be crucial, and the partnership with our citizens and an individual can do good things. A team can do great things. And that's something that we stand by at Clackamas Fire. And it's no different with our community members. You know, I'm not trying to make this a platform to thank a bunch of people, but if you look at Officer Schaefer and the Coffee Creek team that helped the Bonnie Lure area, it's that collaboration and that teamwork that it is going to make us something unique moving forward. And exploring these ideas and utilizing local resources is going to be a big piece to this, because if this ever happens again, and I'm in the business where I'm telling you this isn't just going to be a once every 100, we got to prepare for the next one. 5 years ago, we had the Eagle Creek fire, and here we are 5 years later, we have a step up from what that fire was. And so we need to prepare for that, and partnering with our communities is going to be crucial, because in the event something like that happens again, we have got to be ready, and we just were not ready. We were not ready for this event, and so we're going to get ready.
Okay, and one of the follow-up questions specific to the Beaver Creek Fire Station says, how far away exactly did Clackamas Fire relocate the Beaver Creek Fire Station? I think that was talking about when the new station was built, and again, that was about a mile up the road,
Yes.
Approximately. So we'll move on to the next question from that one. Okay, one of the questions is, how much is Clackamas Fire committed to invest in apparatus? Chief Brown or Chief Charlton?
Chief, I'll let you go to this, and then I'll back you with what we talked about today.
Sure. So overall, Clackamas Fire maintains a capital improvement plan, which identifies all of the, in this case, fire apparatus, and whether that be a command unit all the way up through a ladder truck, and we put it on a replacement schedule. And then we look to dedicate funds, just as Estacata Fire has done, in reserve funds, to put money away outside the general fund so that we can replace that apparatus when it comes due. We also work hard around federal grants, the Assistance of Firefighter grant, to see if we can access federal funds to help replace apparatus as well. So Chief Brown, if you want to add anything more that
I do. You know, a lot of times we try to buy brand new apparatus, but you also got to understand that we try to be the most fiscally responsible and stretch the taxpayers' dollar as far as we can. And so we look at creative and new ways to purchase equipment, and purchasing equipment that is in still great condition but might have a couple miles on it. We're not above going and doing that, because we put a focus on getting our people, putting the adequate resources and getting them equipment that's going to work. And we don't necessarily have to buy brand new equipment to do that. We look at strategic ways to make taxpayer dollars stretch. And so looking into our current fleet, our fleet 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, that's that capital improvement plan, like Chief Charlton was describing. But it's also, we're a little bit, we always constantly, every single year, looking at our response, and do we still meet the mission of the fire district and the citizens that we're serving. And moving into this Astacata area, it's obvious that we need some more type 6s and type 3s. And so that's something we are looking into, whether we're going to get grant funding for it or look at our budget and move money from projects to that. That's going to be the discussion coming up here in real short term.
Thank you, Nick. From the looks of it, it looks as though we've made it through all the questions related to the merger and to the community. If there are questions that we missed, we'll be going back through these tomorrow, and we'll try to respond to those questions if there were some that were missed with the comments going back and forth within the comment section. So we'll make sure that we'll do our best to make sure no question goes unanswered there. There are two sort of outstanding wildland fire questions that maybe we can address those two questions as a wrap up. And then again, if there are additional questions, we can work hard to answer those within the comment section tomorrow. So the first question for Chief Brown, back to the wildland discussion. Why were locals threatened with arrest while attempting to put out fire that Clackamas Fire would not put water on?
That's a great question, and I've heard this from multiple people. George Youngberg is the one that has expressed this to me the most, and I don't have an answer for you other than our communication with some members of our public didn't go like we wanted it to go or like we stand for, and that's our fault. Okay, in stressful situations where you have stress responses, sometimes you respond not how you normally would, and so we're looking at our critical stress response with community and seeing how we can better prepare ourselves for situations like this. But to be completely honest here, we went to level 3 evacuations across the fire district like we've never done before. And we weren't expecting to see the community members that we saw there because we didn't know you. We didn't know what you could do. We didn't know your history. We didn't know your experiences. And now we do. And so I think moving forward, that would have been a different conversation because now we know each other. I think the response, point blank, in talking to a couple of the people that made those statements, the reason that they made those statements is because they were fearful. They were fearful that somebody was going to get hurt. They were fearful that the member of the public was going to get hurt or a firefighter was going to get hurt in situations, whether it was a vehicle traveling too fast in their opinion, or whether it was the members of the public putting themselves in a situation to extinguish fire that our crews didn't know the experience level and what they could do. And so it was a stressful response. And so from the two individuals that I narrowed down where that happened, that's what was going on. And that's where, moving forward from here, we're looking at training our people from the first day they walk into this organization about how to communicate correctly. I can't even speak tonight. Communicate effectively with our communities in stressful situations like that, so that they understand what our strategies and tactics are, so that they understand what it is that we're trying to do, and so that we can collaborate together. And so this has been a big failure in those neighborhoods, in those situations where this happened with us, and we own that. That's all I can say to it, is we own it, and we're trying to fix that specific piece. But it was meant from the individuals that it happened. It was a fear-based, it was a stress-based response.
Okay, and Chief Brown, one last question before we wrap up tonight, and we'll sort of open it up to any closing remarks from any of the panelists here. Again, back to the wildfires. Can you make public where all Clackamas crew apparatus were on between the date ranges of September 8th and September 11th? And I can repeat that question if needed.
September 8th to September 11th?
Correct, that's what's listed.
Okay, so we're in the process right now of getting all of that information. The problem we're running into a little bit is there's certain responses in like the Unger or the Riverside where dispatch CCOM just pinned certain calls to the grouping area of fire, of where the fire was at. So to answer your question, we'll strive to get that data out to you. I have sent in the past to George Youngberg the responses for the fire responses, but we also have medical and a bunch of responses with that. So we'll get back with tomorrow morning and we'll look at that. And wanting it posted, is that what the question was?
Just to reread the question is, can you make public where all Clackamas crew apparatus were between 9/8 and 9/11?
I mean, yeah, they were fighting fire. And so we'll get, we have we have means to get that from CCOM for sure. I don't know the model at which they want it posted, but we can look into that.
Okay. As we mentioned, those were the 2 additional fire-related questions. We know there are a few more trickling in. We will do our best tomorrow morning to address those questions directly and respond to the comments within the questions. As of now, it's just a touch after 9 o'clock. If there's any closing comments from any of the panelists, now would be the time for that. So I know Chief Brown.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. I just, again, I can't thank you enough for your time and giving us the opportunity to talk. I appreciate the community members that I've had the opportunity to communicate with and to meet. I appreciate the community members that gave it their all to save their community. I appreciate the firefighters that gave it their all to protect the communities which they sworn an oath to protect. I think it's something special when you work together as a team, and amazing things can happen when you work together as a team. And I just wish that would have been a blanketed across this whole entire incident, and it wasn't. And that's something that we are going to make sure gets corrected. And moving forward, that's how the view is from the citizens of Estacada and Clackamas Fire, that they know that their Clackamas firefighters are part of the team, because that's what we value and that's who we are. And I can't do anything but own the fact that there's certain pockets of the community that feel that way. To the community members that had great interactions with us, I'm glad that that's what was represented. And I thank Director Silva, Director Oliver, Searing, and Trotter for the opportunity to sit here today and your guys' time to sit and be part of this, and Dieters, Paxton, and Chief Charlton. So I thank you very much, and I appreciate your time. And please, if you have more questions, forward the questions and we'll get them answered.
On behalf of Estacada Fire Board of Directors, I appreciate the public being available. If Paxton, if additional questions come in for like one of the board directors, please feel free to email that to my Estacada Fire email address and I'll answer it immediately. So I really want to thank the public. There is an article in the paper that I recommend that you read. And then, you know, if you have any questions, get a hold of them and they will get the questions to me or see me in town. Okay. Thank you.
Director Searing.
I'd like to thank the staff for all the work that you've done. I've learned a lot tonight. I'd like to thank our citizens again, the citizen heroes, the citizens in both of our districts. Thank our firefighters, the volunteer crew members. They serve with their hearts and their souls, and they try to do a great job for our communities. I hope you've had the opportunity for the citizens in Estacada who never seen us, never met us before. Maybe you had the opportunity, hopefully, to learn a little about our history. And all we are is little communities, just like you are, that have went through this before and share the same values. And I hope that we mean that sincerely. I hope you learned a little about who we really are. And I'm appreciative that the chiefs are taking responsibility on behalf of our district. All of us, we're all in that together. That's who we are. Self-assessment is important. And I thank my Estacada colleagues. We built a lot of trust together over these last 4 years and have a great working relationship. And I very much appreciate them and their support that they've given us in return. Because a merger isn't just somebody taking somebody over. A merger is you join, you take the best of both and you create something that's brand new and exciting for the future of everyone. That's what a merger is all about. That's what the word merger means. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Just to add on to that, it's hard to follow Chief Brown. He's so incredibly passionate about what we do. But again, thank you for reaching out. Thank you for the concerns. We want to get better. We understand where our strengths are. And now we clearly understand where our weaknesses are. But most importantly is we're here to serve you, and we need your help to help us improve our performance. So as we talked about, getting a community together to look at how do we organize local resources and build those relationships. And we have been in a pandemic, we have had a lot of challenges, but this is a time where we need to come together, and we need your help. So again, for the successes we had, we're proud of those, but more importantly, for the challenges we had, we take full responsibility for those. Again, we failed to meet expectations. We apologize for that. We want to work together, and hopefully tonight we shared a lot of information. We still have a lot of work to do, but again, thank you for taking your time to be with us tonight.
Okay, with that, that concludes the community meeting. Again, thank you very much, and continue to provide the feedback, and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.